Greetings all, my name is Nabab Cackney-Hess and welcome to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class here out of the UK, brought to you by All Eyes on Egypt, Midlands and the North. Thank you to Ba'h B'ah who's going to be facilitating today's session. I've not been on for a few weeks, so maybe it's a bit slow today, but nonetheless, no less quality from us in terms of what we've got to speak on today. So it is the Lotus of Life Revisited part 4. So that's what we're talking about today. This may be the final part depending on how we get on. Obviously, if you want more information, then seek out the actual fact itself called Lotus of Life. You can see the picture on the screen. See the picture on the screen there from your local All Eyes on Egypt store. Okay, so let's just get us back to the beginning here. Right, so I'm just going to run a quick poll just to make sure that you can hear me okay over the Om chant. So if you can just vote just to let me know that you can hear me clearly over this Om chant in the background. If there is any adjustments to be made, by all means just give us some feedback in the chat area. So can you hear me clearly? You may need to swipe left and right on your device just to be able to vote. So can you hear me clearly? Okay, so testing 1, 2, 3, testing. So you should be able to hear me clearly over the Om chant. If it's not, or the Om chant's too loud, etc., then by all means just give us some feedback and we'll make the necessary adjustments. Okay, so I'll move on then to this visual check. So can you see the presentation screen? So you should see a newspaper with some Egyptian deities and some Safaf hieroglyphics in the background. So you should be able to see that screen okay. Again, depending on what device you're on, you may need to swipe left or right in order to see that if you're on the Zoom platform. Obviously, if you're joining us on Facebook, then the screen will be showing as it is on the screen now. Yes, you'll see that on Facebook. Okay, all right, appreciate that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just start off the class with a positive affirmation. So I'm going to do that in a cultural way. We are United Sabians Worldwide. So this is brought to you by a division within that called All Eyes on Egypt, Midlands and the North. We're going to start off with a cultural aspect of our culture, which is called Partakya, the affirmation. I'm going to say that in the Isbatia or Sabaic language and then translate that into English for proper understanding. So no need to be intimidated or scared. It's just us giving a positive affirmation and connecting with our ancestors. So we have a positive class today. Adoy Kaleh Tapalurat Ufakur Ame Kasam Un Empa Paut Naut Muqtad Baded Pata Naut Mukhlas Baded Yaanuwn Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Empa Paut Wu Kalel Ashuk Kawun Jawef Neya Anuki Kasam Un Empa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Kasam Un Em Neya Anuki Wahu Ameh Pa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Wahu Ameh Neya Nakuk Kado Najo Ameh Kasam Un Empa Paut Wu Habub Ameh Mushachas Un Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kalel Pafef Nakuk Dayur Jawef Pa Paut Ameh Waseh Ameh Dayarni Kawun Lakei Bakoy Jawef Pa Paut Anuki Abed Bin Afashni Pa Paut Kawun Anuki Pa Paut Kadur Nakuk Kadur Pa Paut Amul Nakuk Amul. So that was a positive affirmation as I say, called Partak Yud in the language. So we started off saying, no God except Ta, no Savior except Yaanuwn. And I am in divine love of the all-expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am a part of the all-expanding, and the all-expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all-expanding, and the all-expanding is one as me. I can succeed as part of the all-expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all-expanding, as long as my want is to stay in the all-expanding. I am never by myself. The all-expanding is, I am. The all-expanding can, I can. The all-expanding does, I do. So setting off, as I say, positive thoughts, allowing us to connect with our ancestors for a positive class today. So a quick introduction on the Zoom platform for anybody just joining us on the first time today. Obviously, if you are on Facebook Live, these options won't apply to you. So if you do want the full interactive experience, join us on Zoom using the link in the chat area. Otherwise, as I say, certain questions and things that you may place in that area, they may not be picked up during the live class, but certainly will be picked up afterwards. So if you've got any feedback which are not questions, then please, by all means, this is your panel. If you're on Zoom joining us, if you need to adjust your audio settings for any reason, the options to the left are shown there. Then we've got 3 buttons: chat, raise your hand, and then ask a question there, Q&A. So this is for any questions which are not any feedback, that are not questions. So you can select everyone as a distribution option. That means that everybody can see what you're posting. And as I say, it could be feedback, positive, negative, whatever. That's not a question, then place it in the chat area. 2 ways to ask questions is an interactive session today. So if you do not understand something, do not sit there in ignorance. Ask questions. You understand, it's better you leave here knowing than sitting there in ignorance and not knowing or being confused. Because we're using a lot of different terminology. There's different levels of knowledge within the sessions today. So we try to cater for everybody, but obviously we don't know who's who. So by you asking questions, then that's going to help me as a student teacher today, at least, to help you understand what we're teaching. If you don't understand it, it's pointless me being here. So 2 ways in which you can ask questions is 1, raise your hand. This allows you to come through live. At certain points, I'll say, is there any questions? And by raising your hand, what you'll see, the facilitator will come to you and ask you to unmute your mic by calling your name. Simply unmute yourself. And then you ask your question, interactive, live. If you've dialed in, I don't think anybody has today, but if you have dialed in, then those options are slightly different. So it's *9 on your phone to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself once prompted. In both instances, once you are unmuted, you have the ability to mute yourself and unmute yourself at will. So we ask you just to stay muted as to not disturb the rest of the class if you're not asking a question. The second way to ask a question is by using the Q&A button. So if you don't want to come through live and ask your question directly, put your question into the Q&A and then we'll pick it up. Again, the facilitator will read that and ask it on your behalf to myself, and obviously I'll answer to the best of my ability. If the question is not answered or you've got some feedback, then simply come back on your question and we'll pick that up as part of the interaction today. So that's it in that regard in terms of asking questions or induction on the Zoom platform. We do have recap quizzes which are done. We haven't got any today, but again, this encourages you really to update your Zoom platform to the latest version so that when we do have these types of sessions, then you can fully interact. It's not something, as I say, to be afraid of. It's anonymous. You're not being marked you are being marked insofar as there's a wrong and right answer. But you're not, we're not keeping score, or we're not keeping who's get the answers right or not. We can see it, but so we're not keeping any kind of score. It's for your understanding so that you retain this information and you're not treating us as a form of edutainment. Obviously, this is about you or aiding you in your ascension journey to transform yourself, obviously, back from mortals, back into supreme beings or deities, once again, through your spiritual science known as Wu-Sabat, which you get into in the class today. Okay, so obviously we're talking about the Lotus of Life. Very quick introduction so that you understand we are ontologists, so we're interested in the science or the essence of things. So who is the master teacher? We call ourselves student teachers, and we use the term we. Oftentimes you hear me saying we, even though I'm a single person, because we consider ourselves obviously a team. Not only a team of student teachers in terms of our association, the matriarchal, but also we are under, or who gave birth to us, at least spiritually, is our master teacher, and who we call Dr. Malachi Z. York. He was born in Ghana, Takoradi, West Africa, June 26, 1945, by way of Mary Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. So our tribes have always been matriarchal in origin. This is one of the things that you're learning about in the Lotus of Life sessions. And so it's important when we're dealing with teachers who may be framed as leaders, that you understand who their parents are, their genealogy, so on and so forth. And in a lot of instances, you need to understand what their zaham or religious opinions are, because it will help to inform how they define words. So you want to have proper understanding when you're dealing with certain things. But the important thing is that we were and are matriarchal. Obviously, through monotheistic religious teachings, that has shifted to us in the world, or the world becoming more patriarchal. But obviously, by way of the forces of nature, that is changing. So as part of those cycles, you're seeing feminine or sacred feminine leadership rising back to power again. So Mary Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn is a very important sacred feminine, born in the last 6,000 years. So we've had a number of different teachers who have brought, one would argue, a piece of the puzzle, a piece of our story, which is renewed every 24,000 years, back to us. And so, being that this is the end of that 24,000 year cycle into the new 24,000 year cycle, and our story is always renewed at the end, her role was pivotal in birthing, as I say, a great teacher for us in this day and time, understood. So Fatima Maryam, as she was known, March 10th, 1929, and as I say, when she was alive, held the position, or was, as our culture was restored, she was appointed to the position of clan mother, understood. And this is how you see it in the clan mother attire here. And you see some of the sacred colours, interestingly, with the black, the gold, and the red showing there. And what we've been talking about here, which is prevalent throughout, Sabian and as well as the ancient Egyptian culture, you see the lotus flowers here, a symbol of not only females but also resurrection. Yeah, so in a clan mother attire, and say the mother of Dr. Malachi Z, Kabina York Okran. His father, again from the Sudanese side, so again the Ghanaian side, comes from where he was born, and his mother, obviously having some descendancy from the Akan tribes in Ghana, the Iwe tribe in particular. And then here from the Sudanese side, we see Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, part of the Sayyid family, very great family in Sudan, tying back into Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi of the Sudan. You see, born here 1845 to 1885. So again, a great lineage there, and a great man himself, Sayyid Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi. Unfortunately, he was assassinated in 1970, and so never got to really live the full life there and see the great things that his son and that lineage has now helped us to produce. But the Mahdi, as he was known as, which means the guide, was pivotal, I suppose, in driving in the great tradition of some of our great pharaohs of ancient Africa, of driving foreigners who had adverse intentions for our people out of our lands and driving them across the border. And so a master Karama, a supreme spiritualist, as I say, who, whilst was clothed in the guise of Islam, his actual origins are from ancient Egypt. You understand? So from that culture, he was hired by the Sudanese, as I say, in driving the British and the Turks out of their lands. Understood? So that gives us the lineage there from both parents. So you're 1/3 your parent, 1/3 your mother, 1/3 your father, and the two of those coming together creates a new you. Obviously, if we were to use numerology, the mother would be 1, father 3, and then they create 5, which is the so yeah. So women sharps, men flats, and then the two of them coming together creates a major tone, which is the child at 5. Understood? So this is a depiction of Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. Now, in our culture, because we've not really been around long enough to understand it, but the term that's used for how our story gets renewed. So you can imagine that in our situation, as a people, certainly in the last 6,000 years, we have strayed away from our original ways of the universe. The original teachings of our spiritual science and culture was very much lost. And certainly in the last 400 years, you have seen, as I say, what happened is with the kidnapping of our people from Africa and then being displaced in various places around the world, they looked like us, in a sense, so they looked black, but yet their mind was conditioned to be in the image and after likeness of the Muadamu or the Caucasian. Do you understand? And that hybrid of them being taken out of their natural environment and then being forcibly taught another culture created the Negro. You understand? Negro. You understand? So look like us, but thinks like them. You understand? And we're still obviously fighting that legacy from not only our genes being tampered with, but us being removed from our natural environment, taught a foreign culture, and also, as I say, the removal of any kind of language that helped us to link, let's say, back to that type of culture. But that's been going for the last 6,000 years. The culmination of it was the 1600 so-called slave trade, which should be rightfully called kidnapping. So the renewal of our story by the forces of nature brings this Amanubi Ra'akata, which is a vehicle or a vessel that allows our ancestors to communicate a lot of information to us in a very short period of time. As we're taking a long walk on a short path. Yeah, the Egyptians, or the ancient Egyptians, yeah, Kadem Mukmatu, as they say in the Sabaic language, referred to this being as Tahuti. Yes, so it's a vehicle or vessel that allows our ancestors to speak through. And this is the master teacher at age 25, and he claimed to be housed by a being that was allowed our ancestors to guide the pen. You understand? So over 1,000 books have been written in various different guises in order, to say, to help aid and transform us from mortals back into deities again. And that's not an egotistical statement. When people visit our lands in Africa and they see the large statues of our ancestors, they say, oh, those are Egyptian gods. But to us, they are our blood relatives. Do you understand? Our Salafu, as they say in the Sabaic language. Understood? We don't worship our Salafu. We respect them, or our ancestors, and we have conversations with them in a ritualistic way, if you know how to connect. You understand? Because clearly they're in our bloodstream, and our link back to them is referred to as our soul seed. So your mother, the fact that you're standing here, you must have had a mother, father, and then so on and so forth. If you trace that back, then that would be our sort of etheric lineage. When we're talking about our physical genealogy, then we're going back 4 generations. But so this is the method of why you see this method being used as opposed to what the Muadam or the Caucasians have to do, which is dig up the bodies of their ancestors and study their history. You understand? We don't do those things. We don't have to desecrate what has previously been buried. Our knowledge is coming etherically from above in the form of what is described as outformation. And therefore giving us in the confines of this planet, that becomes information. Understood? So he brought this spiritual science for Wu-Sabat. Now, at the time when they came in 1963, what the doctrine that they were hitting us with was too heavy for the minds of the people at that time. They wanted to worship, they wanted to be in what would be described as a monotheistic religions today in various different guises. So they wasn't ready for the teachings of Wu-Sabat, the spiritual science of the Negroid or Nagaru people. So he made the statement, I came giving you what you want, so you would learn to want what I really came to give. So the combination at that time was Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi and the Ifrit being inside, known as the Parnatharu, was known as El Khadir, the green one. And in 1996, or around about 1996, because each of the elders that incarnate is given an hour. So if you think about the 24,000 year cycle and the planet, which is, as I say, 24,896 miles in circumference, then that's split into hourly sections symbolically. So each elder is given hour symbolically to convey the information that is going to help, obviously, to upgrade us as their children, their people, that they created many millions of years ago on this planet, starting with the sands people and us evoluting out of the waters on this planet. Now, 1996 was quite key because there was a book called The Holy Tablets that was released, which Honorable Elijah Muhammad predicted to come, referred to as the Book of Lamb, you understand, which is an Arabic word, which is equivalent, I suppose, to the English letter L. And in the Holy Tablets, each chapter starts with the term Lo. You understand? This was symbolic of this term. And this was basically the bridge between religion and reality. So in that half an hour, 1996, this book was released, and it addressed, I suppose, all of the kind of monotheistic religious stories, and then created a bridge taking us back really to all roads lead to ancient Africa, specifically our doctrine not only of Wu-Sabat, in previous guises known as Wu-Nawap, but that is the culture that you see as, say, what the ancient Egyptians, or us as the ancient Egyptians, were following. Understood? And so that new combination now, with this shift, because the 6,000 year Mukaso Caucasian rule was ending, and it was now coming into the the new 24,000 year cycle, and the end of the 6,000 year of the last 24,000 year cycle. We were coming into now our story, the end of the moon cycle, coming into the sun cycle, 9th of September 1999, where the devil's rule, so-called, ended, and we were now moving into our culture. So a new combination was needed there, or as it was given to us. So Dr. Malachi Z, Kabina York, or Clan, and then Ifrit being known as Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. Understood? So the Egyptians referred to them, or us as the Egyptians referred to them as the Natharu, which means overseers, but their proper title is Murzaku, understood, and it means providers. Yeah. Now, when we are perceiving the Natharu, we see them as sons, S-U-N, sons. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing. Yeah. And we are obviously their descendants. Understood? So we look at the word ancestor, in Akkadian, it means really son, An. You understand? You see also in Sumerian, you see the term Anu, on high. You understand? You see that in ancient Egypt with two N's, as the proper name for what the Greeks refer to as Heliopolis, the city of the sun. But Anu, you see with two N's, it's basically talking about the sun. Understood? And so this is showing you that when you're saying ancestors, you're really saying son-cestors, hence why we are referred to as their descendants, because we descended down from that gaseous state, obviously, to materialize here into the physical. And therefore, because we have a solar plexus, we are burning black, then we are the terrestrial representation of the sun. Yes, and all other races on the planet revolve around us as the originators. Yes, and again, not egotistical statement, nothing to do with black power, just simple actual facts. Understood? Racism means that the world doesn't want to accept these facts, And even in their Bible, they say, well, honor your mother and father so your days will be long and prosper. Well, you didn't want to do that, so now your time now is coming to an acute end. Understood? Not by way of us, by way of your own ancestors. So again, so you see the Miskian form here, and say who the Egyptians referred to as the Natharu, and this hieroglyphic symbol, or the Safafat symbol, was 3 flags. You understand? So when you see 3 flags, or if you see a single flag, that's an individual Nathar. You see 3 flags, that's referring to all of them, the Natharu. Understood? Where they get the English word nature from. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell too long on that. Quick introduction of, say, on Wu-Sabat, and then we'll get into what we need to talk about today. So, as we talked about earlier, because we're dealing with the Lotus of life, I think it's important to sort of understand that it's the feminine forces or female forces you see there all the way back in what is Nawap, without the right knowledge series, that birthed the solution. Yeah, this Amanabab Akhtar understood for the story that has to be renewed. You see here 25,000, that's rounded up, or 24,000, some say also. Yes, so importantly, it came to disclose to the people, especially those of his own kind. So our doctrine is for the world, but more importantly, it's designed to inform our people. You understand? People of Nagaru descent, who are Nagaru, or black people world over. Understood? And it's important to understand the science of Wu-Sabat, which is the science of sciences, all comprehension, etc., doesn't alter. But there's a Sabatic word referred to as balag, Ba'h B'ah balag, and it means message. So the message is tailored for the people at that time. So this doctrine is designed, obviously, for the people with our mindset at this time, because our genes have tumbled forward, understood, over many millions of years since the waters of this planet were first germinated by our etheric ancestors. Yes, but those genes have tumbled forward. So we're not the same. We are the same, but we're not the same, if you understand, as our ancestors. Environment obviously affects the way the genes express themselves. So 76% of our DNA is what we'd say in a static state. But 24% of our DNA is in a transient state, reacting basically to our environment. So as environmental factors change, it's also causing us to change. And so therefore, our doctrine, or the message, of Yaanuwn in this case, needs to be tailored for the people at that time. So that's a strategy that's been used by our ancestors periodically in order to give us certain pieces of the puzzle to unlock the spell that we've been suffering from for the last 6,000 years. So I go back and I show you, you've had many different types of teachers. As I say, if you look at the list back here, we just highlight 7 in particular who have brought different parts of a puzzle to help unlock. And so when the final teacher came, at least for this cycle, we would have a better understanding or be ready to accept this science or the guidance of Wu-Sabat, spiritual science that helps to unify us mentally, and then the physical unity can follow, which all other races in their guise have their own spiritual science by different names. Obviously, most are unified under the badges of various different religions, which has been gifted to them by their ancestors and helps them connect with their ancestors. And unfortunately, what most people don't realize is that the science of the connection between us and our ancestors, which then gets interpreted as culture, religion, and various other language, and various other things that connect a culture or birth a culture, or could be described as a culture for a people, allowing them to come together and unify. Understood? You can't just choose religion. In the West, you can, because you've got multiple choice. But if that's not to do with your ancestry or your bloodline, then it leads to idol worship. And I don't mean idol as in IDOL, IDLE. So you get no spiritual power from it because it's not your ancestors. You have to deal with what is according to your genes. And when we talk about us being the descendants, well, you think about water. Water as in a gas form is steam, isn't it? It slows down in vibration, the molecules, it turns into water. Slow down the molecules again, and then it turns into ice. Understood? But it's the same thing. So you have to understand that linkage or connection is why you were gifted a religion or culture, because as we, in our ascension journey, us being at least in the physical plane here, in the lowest level of vibration, yes, it requires us, obviously, we are to, when we step out at the point of death and pass through that doorway, if we have mastered this particular school, then there are obviously, there's a pathway being laid for us by our ancestors in order to continue that ascension journey and develop not only from their children, but into them or rejoin them clearly as children of the overseers to eventually become overseers once again. You know, become 720 as they refer to, 360 mastery of physical plane and 360 degree mastery of the spiritual plane, making you 720 again, a complete being. Yeah, 7 plus 2 takes us to 9. So importantly, as I say, for this class as well, but just generally, feminine forces of nature appoint the teachers from amongst us and give birth to them for this being to come and reveal, as you can see on the screen there, the hidden past, the changing present, which allows us to replace faith and take control of our fate once again by taking control of our ruling future. Understand? All by way of being this outformation in the form of information, by way of Wu-Sabat, restoring us back to our proper place in natural nature. Yeah, so again, very quickly, not to go into this in too much detail, but these classes are based on actual facts. Obviously, Parteract word that means guidance, and so we seek to give you various different ways in which to break those facts down so that you can go away and do your own research and it becomes something that you know, not something that you believe. Still, because belief is ignorance, it's acceptance of things that you do not know. This is what has really caught us in this situation. We need to get back to facts again, which is a new spirituality for this day and time. So in the first half an hour of that 30 years from 1970 with the elder, the whole tablet's brought in the fact of, you know, knowledge test, evidence, experience, and reasoning. Understand? So some things must be evidence-based, some things you can't necessarily find evidence, you must experience. And then after, when we came into our time in the second half an hour, symbolic of the second 30 years, then actual facts was then introduced to us because we were no longer dealing with the symbolism that was there in religion. Now we're getting back to the real, facts, the essence of who we are, as opposed to the what we became versus many of the decisions that we had to make. So the questions, obviously, are these 6 W's they refer to, are the questions that one can ask in order to determine whether it's something I should accept or disregard, understand, in terms of knowledge. Yeah? So it's our protection in that regard, and to get us back to be able to discern, what is good for us loosely, and then what is negative or adverse for us. Yeah. So somebody taught us that we're the same under the skin, but if that was the case, then why do we look different externally if we are the same internally? So it doesn't make sense. So who we are according to natural nature, in a certain natural design, our genealogy, our genes, what was programmed into our genes to express itself in this environment, versus what we accepted by nature. So there is a distinction, and this is the one why we've highlighted it in gold there, so that we're trying to get back to who we are, not the what. There is a separation, like a fake, version of us that's been created in this society, oftentimes in order for survival, or in the absence of any sort of real knowledge of who we are. We became this kind of fake what. So we all have to walk this journey, as you see on the screen there, taken from the proof, where the master expressing, I'm a who, not a what. I've incarnated this time for you to know only tasu, 9 worthy quests. Yeah, so when we're seeking to know a thing, then we have to walk these paths. So yes, then we got our questions there, but we're always seeking proof, then confirmation, and then that which the thing is should reveal itself to us, yeah, as ontologists. So that doesn't mean what we say is being confirmed by what the white man says in some documentary book or out of their universities, so on and so forth. Now, they may be useful sources, etc., but that doesn't make something factual. You need to get that out of your head when some people think, okay, well, Master Teacher may write something in a book and somebody else from some other culture confirms it, then that makes it real. No, that doesn't make it real, because if you think about it, beyond 6,000 years, there were no Mokasu around. So many of the institutions that they're dealing with were not even around when some of the older races on the planet were here and thriving and here for millions of years. So they can't comment on things that they wasn't there to experience, understand, live, etc., or in our case, where it's been designed, understand, from the very origin of things. So we need one of our own in order to explain certain things to us, but so it doesn't become another belief system. You have to walk this journey in order to seek confirmation. Do you understand? In that regard, in the many different guises, you see the knowledge test that we expressed earlier, evidence, experience, and reasoning as some of those. Understood. Now, so very quickly, so that science of Wu-Sabat is referred to as animism, and it is the opinion or viewpoint that we descend from a soul force first, that the soul is what is real and everything else around us is illusionary. You understand? Now, into that in loads of detail in previous classes. I think we've addressed that in some detail, and certainly check out our YouTube channel or go back further if you want that more detail on that. But that's more to say that when you look at classes like reflection and projection, or seek out the actual fact called reflection and projection, when you understand how your eyes work, you understand that you're not looking outwardly, you're looking inward. And the image that's being created obviously is a 3-dimensional holographic image that you then project outwards based on your knowledge and experience, and have how you interpret light being reflected back onto your retina. Understood? And that's why you can have optical illusions and things of that nature. So the image that you're seeing that appears external is your interpretation of the environment within. Now, that's suffice to say that not that the environment is not real, but you're looking at an interpretation of the environment. So what is in and around us, or what we're calling real, is illusionary, because if something is real, it can't be transformed from something else into something else. You understand? If I'm looking at a chair, for example, a chair is not what the thing originally was if it's made from wood, for example. Yeah. So it was previously may have been a tree or something else, you understand, which has now been changed and destroyed and then rebuilt, etc., and reshaped. So you're not looking at what the thing was. You're looking at the end of the journey of what it became, but not what the thing is. Yeah, so we're living in this, in the physical sense at least, we're living in an illusionary world. And what is real within that world, or real to us, is our soul, which links to, for us as Nagaru, links directly to the mind or the mental. Understood? In fact, the soul is a projection of the mental downwards. And it's one of the things why we're able to live many different lives on this planet, to understand, up to 24,000 and even more than that in order to master this particular plane. So the animism or the science of Wu-Sabat as animism is that we stem from this soul force first. We were energy, certainly way before we became into this material context. And so the word religion, although, as I say, we would say Wu-Sabat is a way of life as opposed to religion, but it can be called that insofar as if you look at the etymological meaning of the word, tying back to holiness, which takes it back to the word sun or solar. Do you understand? So, and the city of the sun, place of the sun, because we are sun children having sun heat genes within our system, you understand, which separates us, as I say, or certainly the amount of those separates us from other races on the planet, which obviously we have given birth to, where, as I say, different groups of extraterrestrials have tampered with our genes and then created versions of the original races. So you can see there on one of the questions, talking about, as I say, our ancestors landing here in crafts. Modern day terminology would be extraterrestrial, because they were extra to terror from the skies. And you see that even our doctrine is an extraterrestrial doctrine, because most of our monuments are aligned with where our DNA origin came from. Sahat, obviously Orion for males, and Sabatat from Sirius star system for females. Okay. So I don't think we're talking about too much racial issues today, but we do make the statement and the caveat to say that no one wins the race in racism. So if we do talk about racial issues, it's going to be from a scientific perspective. We're not about wrong racism, so we're not interested in suppressing another race to further our race, which is what has happened to our people, oftentimes by way of the Caucasian, and particularly those who get away with it, and the sub race of the Caucasian, which are the Arabs, understood, indulging in kidnapping of our people for servitude, you understand? So it's not about racism for us, it's about race unity and racial pride for us. So if a culture wants to express racial pride, that's not a problem. That's right racism. They should express themselves. But obviously, if your racial pride is stepping on the necks of other human beings, then that's where it becomes problematic. So clearly here, restoration of our own culture, Wu-Sabat, is the restoration of our divine mind. So we're back into our own mind, that link, as we were talking about earlier, back to the mental, where we're doing things that we should be doing based on who we are, based on our ancestors' design of us, what was placed in our DNA, in our genes, and we're not imitating other races. That is unnatural nature for us, at least, and even for any other race. Same way as we've expressed, you understand, if a woman, for example, by way of falling in love, is living in the image and after likeness of a man because of love, that would be unnatural. The same way if a man was doing it in the context of his woman. Do you understand? Not to say that we should not be into what each other are into and having respect of that, but if that's not you, then you shouldn't be doing it just because your man is doing it. You understand? Or vice versa. In that context, this would be unnatural in this way. So it's not even though we're living in some environments in the West, whatever, and we're in these environments, some things are not conducive for us, and ultimately we're going to have to, if we really want to achieve the real heights of success, as you see the symbol of the crown that Master Teachers wear in this particular image, then we're going to have to formulate environments that are conducive to developing and cultivating star children, because that is what we are or are supposed to be, at least as a bare minimum. Now, here, which is important to understand, is this statement from the proof. In the beginning, nothing proceeded. In the middle, nothing stays still. In the end, nothing is after. It's not about what you accept or what you become. It was and always will be who you are. And so the key thing here is the term nothing. That's when you read it again, see, okay, but in the beginning, nothing proceeded. Nothing was there, or no thing. Meaning things don't sum up to something that can be weighed. The world of things. In the middle, nothing or no thing stays still. So motion derives out of stillness, and in the end, nothing is after. Or no thing is after. Understand? So Papa or all, we'll get into that a little bit, but think about what this statement's doing, and we'll clarify a bit more as we step through this class today. Now, let's keep it moving. Let's keep the introduction fairly short, but I know we haven't been on for a minute. Again, just very quickly, this is one that we tend to kind of go over a few times, because obviously you're receiving outformation or various different things, particles, waves of energy, so on and so forth. You're receiving all the time thoughts, etc., that are influencing your thinking. Understood? But to stop us from tripping out, our doctrine provides a foundation. Do you understand? It's called sound right reasoning, and sound can mean, as say, what is received from space and beyond, not just what you come through your ears, but it also is synonymous with like sound, like solid foundation is also what the word means. So in order to ground us and to be ensure that what we're taking in, we must ensure is factual before we accept it as part of our being, then inspiration whether it are attributes or results that accompany reasoning. So creative reasoning, if you're not aware, is the most powerful force for us in terms of our attributes that we are born with. Creative reasoning, you understand? As many different types of reasoning, but creative reasoning in particular. So we are receiving, let's say, outformation in the form of information every waking moment of the day. We may wake up and certain things we've read, certain things it may give us certain concepts, but it must be checked out, in the sense so that you're not tripping, in the sense just because you've received something in your head doesn't make it right. You still have to do the work with either within yourself to seek that confirmation and confirm it against, in this case, actual facts. Understand? Otherwise, as I say, because of who we are, we're melanated beings, we're receiving all these different energies, frequencies. There are things in existence that we cannot see, but certainly will utilize thoughts, take advantage, and utilize us for their own purposes. So you have to have your guard up. I think we used to say in the Master Teacher's books many years ago, you say, and even today, read with an open mind. Yes, the reflection and projection, actual fact, taught us, yes, we are open, but must read with a controlled mind now, insofar as guarding what information we take in, and then making sure it goes through the check or the filters to make sure that it's converted by sound right reason for authenticity, reasonability, to see that they are indeed true and make sense. Truth is truth. You understand? Must back to sapiens. We always must hold on to, these things of Master Secret, ultimate reality, because of the way we are. We are spiritual and physical beings. Spiritual does not mean not factual. Understand? It may not be some of the tests that we have are always relevant to do spiritual tests, but just because you receive something in your head or somebody had a dream, etc., does not mean that it's not required to go through the tests for authenticity and reasonability, to make sure it's right and it's correct. You understand? So it's something that one has to be aware of in terms of those disciplines. Now, when we talk about animism, it's a good thing to help us to understand. Some of these things does tie into what we're talking about today. See here in Ultimate Reality, again, Master Secret, says in Wu-Sabat, you deal with natural universe science, like scientific information, animism. That is by all natural phenomena, by the Ba'ah soul, that which is real in fatard nature and your environment. So that touched upon what we were saying earlier about we're looking at things from the soul perspective. That is what is real in the environment. Understood? Yes. And what this, as I say, what you call the physical body, you understand, is simply the car, or the vessel or vehicle that allows the soul, very highly technological and impressive device, enables us to navigate here into the physical. You're dealing, remember, with your ancestors, the Panatharu, whose technology is what we're seeing in nature. So you might think, for example, when you think technology, sometimes you think computer, you think mobile phone, Yeah, you might see a crane, for example, on a building site and think, okay, that's impressive construction technology. You're not necessarily always thinking, that your hand is a form of crane. You understand? Like a working thumb is a form of crane. That your hypothalamus gland, for example, is equivalent to the mobile phone. So when our ancestors are expressing themselves technologically, this is what you're seeing by way of nature. So nature in itself is a designed system, but a reactive system designed to govern, as I say, the environment. Highly impressive, highly technological. So when we think about nature, we have to think in the context of nature being the highest form of technology, at least for us. That obviously clearly governs everything else. And so different beings or different even extraterrestrials will be of different technological prowess, skill, capability, and in that regard, as say, ours or the Panatha at least being the highest and therefore govern all of those environments or govern and navigate or deal with the expansion of what we call in existence. So, ontologist animist, a term also used for us, the supernatural, is to say that the very natural, not spookism, is natural nature at its highest and lowest points within existence. So we're dealing with sort of A to Z, if you want to call it, within existence. And as I say, what we're interested in is, even if it's things that we can't see, understood, yeah, then we still must work towards seeking confirmation of that. You understand? So, for example, some of the smallest particles within, or say the smallest particle in existence, which we refer to as the black dot, for example, yeah, can not be seen by the physical eye, for example, but it can be felt, yeah, so perceived. So we have to develop our ways to be able to sense what is in the darkness. You understand? We have been focused and programmed poorly by way of bad information to focus on the light. You understand? But the light is blinding. You understand? It is chaos. Yeah, the darkness is where the true power is, where order is. And so within that, because we are that manifestation also of that blackness, we expand across the whole vibrational range, which is certainly even beyond the electromagnetic spectrum that is presented to us today. We expand much farther than that because we've come from the very origin of things. Understand? And so those are the points that here we are clearly at the lowest level of vibration, but we are linked all the way back to the very source of existence as a part of existence. You understand? Where, you know, the words like beginning don't have the same kind of meaning because certain particles have always existed. Like we have always existed, not in this form that you see us in, but what we are made from has always existed. You understand? No beginning or end. It just became detectable once it started to move. Understand, in that regard. So as an animist, clearly, as I say, we're interested in that link, which is why the female is so important as we step through, and you've seen the previous parts of this class and this one, is because of that link, yeah, into natural nature, that link still into the cosmos by way of a menstrual cycle still being regulated by the moon. Understood? Because that link is still there. You understand? The link to the darkness. She's the woman of mystery. You understand? When we say mystery, we're saying my story. Yes? But woman of darkness, an internal being. Yes? Because that focus is on the blackness. You understand? Yeah, not on the light. And that link is important, which is why I think we always kind of emphasize the importance of female or sacred feminine teachers coming now to the fore and really teaching this doctrine, because the illusionary aspect that has been brought about by religion is over. Yeah, because there's no more speculation about what is to take place. If you are linked to it, you have to speculate what happens in the context of life after death, if you're part of existence, which is why when you listen to that all affirmation at the very beginning, it's telling you, I'm a part of all. We're not trying to fight with it. We're not trying to reach or attain. We're merging back in with existence. And once you merge back in, you're a part of it. So that all that knowledge that's there obviously is attainable to you because you're a part of it. And you're not seeking it, you become a part of it. You understand? And so when we understand why we are matriarchal, and hopefully, depending on how well we express that to you today, you'll have a better understanding either in this or future parts of this class once we get to wrap it all up. So past, present, and future, we touched upon this in last class when we started at this point. To continue, when we're dealing with the pineal gland. So there is no real, what we call it in past, present, and future, they're all different aspects of now. Understood? So you have multiple thens of the past and you have multiple thens of the future, but it's all now. You understand? So that is why when you say, okay, well, we have existed or we've always been there, because there are things within us, particles and things within us that are from the very origin of things. And we have that, let's say, link as part of our being. We just happen to be, as I say, in this environment, and say in this particular skin suit, in this level of vibration. I say by no means are we downplaying the importance of the human body, but as I say, it's also part of, in some ways, part of the illusion. Do you understand? Because obviously at the point of death, you shed the body and you become, like when you sleep every night, for example, your physical shuts down and is vibrating around the A range, and you become, or you exist, isn't it, as an etheric being. You become more mental when you are sleeping. You understand? And dreaming, traveling around, etc., etc. Outside of your physical structure and physical body, yes. Then you, as I say, you have left that, so you're existing as part of that, which is say sleep is the sister to death. So you know when you reach that Amun point, you are ready to shed at least the body and exist as a spiritual being, or etheric being, as one part of our, as I say, essential journey. So it's explained to you here, 118. So in fact, supernatural Wu-Sabat means higher or highest. Saham power and black power is called Khemem Magas, black magic of natural nature, or of nature. Not something of white power is called Leben Magas, white magic. So when somebody puts or presents you a white Jesus, for example, to worship and say that we're all the same, that for you as a Nagaru is a form of white magic. Understand? Remember, the science of religion, not the practice of religion, but the science of religion is the interference of the dead into the lives of the living. You understand? Because the dead must subsist off of the living in order to survive. So as we've expressed to you before, the society is set up in a way that at all points really to take advantage of taking your soul as a form of energy, nine ether form of energy that is there to try and seek to feed six ether forces. Because when you say soul, it's the emotional you, isn't it? You understand? Or the creative expressional being. It's emotional you, the energy in motion. So which most Nagarus, if not all Nagarus, a lot of them, do not know the value of the soul. So they don't know what other races who don't have it, or other entities who don't have it, would be willing to do in order to get some of it. If we knew the value, we'd protect a lot of the attributes that we have, not only in ourselves, but looking at those same attributes in others who look like us. We would protect them a lot better because we know the value of it. A lot of our etheric, spiritual, divine talents, if you want to use those words, we do not treat them in a sacred fashion. And sacred just means to have the greatest level of care surrounding it. Understand? We abuse our talents. One of those being the sex force, which is synonymous with the number 6. We abuse it. You understand the power of it? We don't really understand it, and as we get into, say, these classes today, you can see, say, that's part of the programming to make us devalue that power and then abuse our royal or divine genes. You understand? So that it makes our transformation that much harder. Understood? So, You can see here, again, speak about many different subjects, but the claim that we make, and this is why we're important talking about this link, is that in Wu-Sabat we make no such claims that we are, other than the fact that we are linked to our Salafu by our DNA. This is proven, and that we are all Wap Makwanu, supreme beings. They call God Allah Jah. That is who we are. You understand? 139, these are the ultimate facts of Wu-Sabat. Don't believe us, check it out for yourself. So when you look at all their religions, particularly the monotheistic religions, they are sun worshippers. And that sun that they're worshipping is effectively us. We are sun beings, or we're known as star children. A Nagaru or a black woman coming together with a black man or male, we were considered to be star children. A black man with a white woman, because the women vibrate at 6 ether range, understood? And because they are shapeshifters, and their body changes shape every, as I say, 29th, 30th of the month, whenever their menstrual cycle is. They change shape, understood? Shapeshifters, they adapt, or she can raise her DNA level, let's go a vibrational level, not DNA level, a vibrational level to match that of a man. You understand? So a black man with a white woman gave birth to what they refer to as sons of gods. You understand? If a black woman was with a white male, their offspring was referred to as a son of man, because the white male has a vibrational level at 5 ether, the lowest of all the races on the planet, and so she drops her level to match her man in order to produce children. So they were known as the son of man. And then two Caucasians coming together, that was known as the son of the devil. You understand? Very creative term, one might say, but the word devil really means adversary. You understand? In the context of that, and so in that context, it's adverse or going against nature in that context. Understood? So that's how the kind of cycle was made. So you're talking about star children. You understand? Star beings, a terrestrial representation of the sun. You understand? And so, obviously, the word demon, when you're looking at the word really, if we look at it in terms of the symbolism of it, it means dead moon. Yes, it's not the kind of dramatic things you see in movies or cartoons and things like that. It means dead moon. Yeah, because the moon should reflect the light of the sun. You understand? But if it's just feeding off of these forces and energies, then it's a dead entity, subsisting, understood? Whereas, as I say, you think when we talk about the right and the left eye of Asar and Ha, or Asar and Hara, understood? Yes, Hara represents the moon. Understand? Asar was the sun, and the moon is reflecting the light of the sun. There's no light source of its own. It's getting this light from the sun and reflecting that. But a dead moon doesn't reflect the light. It subsists off of the energy, which is, as we expressed, what the science of religion does. This is why a lot of the symbols in the monotheistic religions are symbols of death. And as we expressed to you before, I've been saying it all the time. That's why you say good morning. Understand? That's the influence of Greek culture. We say good morning to each other. MOURNING. Yeah, you're wishing good death on each other, or the forces of the dead. Yeah, the forces of those that subsist off of the living. Understood. Okay, let's get into where we were in the class today. Any questions? I'll rabbit you on a bit. Any questions? Any hands raised? Indeed. Someone's saying that hereafter. Okay, let me see. Hand raised there. I'm not sure where Manford Park.
Right. I'm here, but my unfortunately, my mouse on this cordless mouse, it died or something.
Okay. No.
I'm looking.
I appreciate that. Anything there?
Right, there's nothing, no questions.
Okay, no problem. I see a comment about the hereafter from Judith. Yeah, and that is correct. So we talk about hereafter. So hereafter, yes, the devil's rule ended. So 9th of the 9th, 1999 is known as, and when we came to the year 2000, now stepping into our culture, that is known as the hereafter. And then 2012, which is not a Mayan calendar. The Mayans got that way of calculating time from us as the Anasazi, who they call the Olmecs in terms of descendancy, not directly, but the various different mixtures that came as a result of Chinese coming over, mixing in with our genes, which created the Hopi American Indians and various different other sub races as a result of that mixture. With some Hindu influence in there as well, Dravidian influence in there also. So they got that calendar from us, but we always recorded, remember, that movement of the stars in our calendar as ancient Egyptians. And it symbolizes, as I say, the rise of the woman back to power. So you have the hereafter is the end of the devil's rule, us coming into our power, that 6,000 year cycle coming into the new 24,000 year cycle, and then the thereafter is the rise of the woman back to power. That is what your 2012 is known about. You understand? But 2012, not to get into too much detail, but it's a symbolic date. It's not the date necessarily that's given in that context, because there's a certain event that takes place where the center of the planet starts emitting a double helix type energy, and it represents, as I say, Nut, or the feminine, and it pulses against the surface of the planet, which the earth of the planet represents. In ancient Egypt represents Gibab. You understand? So Gibab, you understand, or Sabab, which is represented anthropomorphically by a male. So there's a back and forth between male and female at this particular point of this double helix type energy emitting from our central sun in the planet, which is 600 miles in diameter, and that pulsing back and forth reaches an apex. So the planet basically has an orgasm. This is why everybody's feeling, hey, I need to get all spiritual all of a sudden. Some going back to the churches, mosques, whatever the case may be. It's a feeling because the planet, as I say, is going through a certain transformation. Do you understand? Which is what, or certainly the characteristics of Wu-Sabat, or us coming back into the knowledge of that, is what's taking place. So that is known as the thereafter. You understand? So we're in the thereafter time now from 2012, hence why you're seeing the rise of the women or females back to power again. So we're returning back to matriarchal settings, as they say in the slang of the youth today. But yeah, matriarchal living once again. So Wu-Sabat, or the science of Wu-Sabat, is the key to transform information into outformation. So really, when you look at that word there, yes, that is talking about us, isn't it? Yeah. So we are information, or we are in a certain formation. You understand? And it requires the science of Wu-Sabat to transform us, or utilize outformation by way of Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, or the master teacher, to utilize that, having knowledge, obviously, of outformation, information, or where we came from and who we are as one of our ancestors, in order to transform us back into deities or supreme beings once again. Yeah, so the key to that science, but its true meaning has not yet been revealed. You understand, in terms of that word, what it really means to us. But the science, or what it contains, as I say, is transformational in that regard. The spiritual science to really unify us as a people. Okay, so let's get back into where we were. In the last part, ending from part 3. So I think we were around about here, if memory serves me correctly. If you've not seen the previous parts, and I think they're all in our YouTube channel now, parts 1, 2, and 3. So I think we were around about here. Yeah, we were talking about your third eye, as it's called, and the pineal gland, which say separate in a physical sense, it is responsible for melatonin production, understand, in a significant way for us. But as you can see here, excuse me, it's also the sort of point where connected to one's third eye, which opens them up to the ability to experience other dimensions for us, you understand, allows us to control time in a way that gives us, say, some of these spiritual faculties. Now, we expressed to you we were talking about the introduction of understanding that when we're looking at time, that we're really talking about now, and talking about past, present, and future. It's all now, and here and the word there, then. Do you understand? They're all related. So here and the word there are only really separated in that regard by that letter T. You understand? So you know that time within now, or how we're certainly thinking about time within the context of now, is a series of say events that have taken place. It's not to do with the hand moving around a clock. That's just a method of calculation, and unfortunately on this planet at least, the way we calculate time is incorrect because it's based on 24 hours, but the planet or the event that signifies what you're calling a day is really 23 hours, 56 minutes and 6 seconds. So we're losing time, hence why you have to have this leap year every 4 years of them correcting mistakes within their calendar. So this is very dangerous for us, obviously, if you're thinking about certain events which are due to take place, if you're not using, or we're not using our own calendar. That's one of the things that say that has to be restored, which again is why you need to be in your own environment, so you don't have this confusion around, you know, what time is it? You understand? What time is it? Because if you have in somebody else's environment, then you're controlled by their rules, their laws, so on and so forth, and then their calculation of time. You understand? Which may not suit you if there are certain events that we're waiting to happen for, which we clearly need to be aware of. Otherwise, if we miss them, then you know, it's not like it's going back. If you miss a train, you know, you only have to catch the next one. You can't catch the same train that you've missed. So in the same way, if you miss an opportunity, then you understand, you have to wait for the next one, if there is one, for that to come again. You understand? There's certain events within our lifetime, they don't happen again. You know, you only experience puberty one time, it doesn't come multiple times if you need to take advantage of that particular moment. So we need to be cognizant of, you know, what is taking place within natural nature's clock, not so much you know, what they have taught us are the things that we need to achieve in this society. That's a lot of times more for survival. They're not necessarily always synonymous with our ascension journey. So we're talking to you about the pineal gland last class, and how it's represented by the pine cone, which ties into the evergreen tree. And there you can see with the evergreen tree, it's not really subject to the, how can I say, kind of up and decline cycles that we see now with 4 seasons, where the planet obviously was moved on to a 23.5 degree axis, and so that you find now that we have 4 seasons as opposed to the original 2 seasons. Yeah, so you had the upper part of the equator, and below the equator were the 2 seasons. Now the planet turns on its axis. You can see as we rotate around the sun in an elliptical orbit, and there are certain points where the planet will be closer to the sun because of that elliptical orbit, and certain times where it'll be further away from the sun. And we describe these points obviously as summer, closer, and then winter, and then the balance points really are your spring and autumn, your balance positions in terms of that. So where the axis of the planet was perpendicular, so a straight line axis, then obviously we only had 2 seasons. Yeah, so in that regard, so the evergreen tree is a life form that basically doesn't go through that up and downs within those cycles. And that's how, when our genes were stronger, when we were not as mixed as we are today, yeah, we didn't know about death. And so some of our early or the originators didn't know about death, understand, until those death cycles came here and we started to experience the decay as our genes became tampered and more mixed in with. Understand? So this is why we're obviously going through not only ascension process, but it's also a cleansing process, isn't it? Master Teacher talks about us cleansing ourselves inside out and outside in as part of that process. Now, he doesn't concern himself, because why he don't know a lot about melanin and melanin production, because he doesn't produce it, so he doesn't concern himself about it, and he's not going to teach someone in that regard that which potentially he would fear them overthrowing him at some point if they came back into knowledge of who and what they were. Now, that's not really our nature, but that's what he fears, and so reacts accordingly. Any questions? I see a few hands up. Any questions? Yeah, or written questions, I should say.
Right, I'm looking. Give us a second. Judith has asked, please explain how the two seasons manifest without a tilt.
So basically, if you were to, there's my pen. Bear with me 1 second. Now let me. Now, I don't know how easily you can see this. I'm going to draw that big. It's got something else on the screen here, but basically, if you think about the, in fact, let me try and do it a different way. Right, now, so you think about the planet there. So excuse my terrible drawing. In fact, let me use this one here. Right, okay, so you see that circle on the screen. Now, if we think about if we consider that to be the sun, yeah, let me put another oval there. And let's say that's the planet Earth, yeah? So, now, basically, the sun is rotating, isn't it? Excuse me, the planet is rotating around the sun in elliptical orbit. Now, if we draw a the line in this regard, so let's draw it in that direction. Excuse me, let's rub that out again. Sorry, this pen's a little tricky. We'll get there. Now, let me draw the line. So, imagine that's the planet. This is the sun, yes? So, if I draw a diagonal line, now, forget my bad drawing, but if I draw a diagonal line there, that's better. Now you can see here with the planet at an angle, when you're rotating around at this particular position, the top half of the planet here is closer to the sun. So you're receiving more sun rays here. So therefore that is being interpreted as summer. But this bottom half of the planet here, draw the equator. You'd have to forgive that drawing, but imagine that's in the middle. Yeah, this bottom half of the planet is still further away, so it's receiving less energies. So on this half of the planet, you've got, on the top half of the planet, you've got nearer, and that's one season. This part of the planet now, below the equator, if that was in, that line was in the middle, now it's slightly further, so it's receiving less energies from the sun. So that's another season. When you see it now, well, here, that it's leaning away, but because the planet's facing that direction, we're not receiving until the planet kind of rotates, or it's turned on its axis, in a circle, it's rotating, but this top half of the planet is also slightly further away. So we're not receiving as much energy during that period while the sun is in that location on the top half of the planet. And the same thing here on this bottom half of the planet below the equator is further away, so you're going to call that winter. So this is now where you're getting your 4 differential moods or seasons. Now, bearing in mind that spring and autumn are very similar because they're balanced positions, whereas the extreme of those are summer and winter. Understood? Now, if you can bear with me with my turbo drawing at this size, yeah. So if I take that same position now and I draw a line through the middle, now what you're seeing here is that basically we've got a more even distribution of energy, understood? Yes, on both sides of the planet, you understand? But again, pushing that line, if you imagine a central line in the middle, we've got a more even distribution. So as it rotates around, obviously, which gives you your sort of night and day, as this planet is rotating, we get a more even distribution of energy on both sides of the planet. So we've only got 2 extremes, or let's say, as opposed to 4. It's at an angle. So this is where we had our 2 seasons as opposed to 4. Now, and obviously as human beings that you'll be familiar with, yeah, most people on the planet at that time would have been ambidextrous. So they used both sides of their body equally. Both sides of their body would have equal strength, and both sides of their body would be exactly the same size because the forces, gravitational forces, will be equal on both sides. When we switch to that 23.5 degree axis, this is where most of the strength now, for those, if you really analyze it, if you were on the top half of the planet, you would have ended up being right-handed, yeah, because the axis would have gone through your body, yeah, and so you'd end up with most of the strength on the right-hand side of your body. If you were on the bottom half of the planet, then you would have ended up left-handed because it would have been the opposite way in which how those forces or the axis of the planet would have affected you. So that's letting you also know that most people, when that event took place, were living on the upper part of the planet as opposed to the bottom part of the planet, because most people are right-handed. So that's how we end up with 2 seasons as opposed to 1 season. Now, there are videos on YouTube that may be better to explain it, where you're looking at the way seasons happen, and it's all about the rotation, say, of the planet in line with its axis. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, please question further. Okay, so there we go. So in that regard, let me just rub that off the screen. Right, okay. So the symbol of the third eye was or in our culture at least, was what's called the patah, in the sense of the jewel that's being worn in the third eye. Both, now, people think it's a Hindu symbol, but it's not a Hindu symbol. It's actually the symbol of one of our ancestors, our deity, patah, the opener. Understood? So symbol obviously open up our eyes, or the all-seeing eye in that context. So our 2 eyes and our mind's eye, understood, with that pineal gland, is opening us up, as I say, to experience other dimensions. You understand? It being the master of time. Understand? So, say, us being able to literally time travel. Now, a form of that, which we were discussing in the last class, was the fact that you yourself, obviously, within your own expansive universal experience, can travel back in your own experiences. You're traveling back in your own memories, understood? Yeah, what the past that you're calling the past, or the younger you, hasn't gone anywhere. It's just expanded. So this is helping you maybe to see it in a slightly different way. Now, here we see the Anunnaki. We touched upon this again last session, I think, where you can see that they're wearing a wristwatch, this particular extraterrestrial, and the symbol of the pine cone is a symbol of that pineal gland, or the ability to direct that power, obviously at will. Yeah, so direct the use of pineal at will, and so this is what is symbolized in that pine cone. As I say, in cycles, as I say, that really are pointing back to a power where our power is even or sustainable. You're not getting this up and down, you understand? Which is one of the sciences of our race, which is not to be in need. Yeah, when they talk about living for and by one another, for example, that is the science of the Nagaru. And it's to do with the fact that the way we have been got, let's say, and the ability, as I say, for us to then to create this hybrid called the Negro is because in interacting or mixing it with our genes, we're now vibrating at a lower level. We're having now vibrating on this 6, even to 1 ether level, even just by way of perception, and for the fact that we've got their genes inside of us. But when we didn't have any interaction with them, where's the decline coming from? Because you haven't got any recessive genes if you're only dealing with dominant genes. Where's the recessive trait coming from? It has to come from outside of your own tribe. You understand? If you're only marrying as a tribe, first people, only marrying within, it's only dominant genes. Yeah, effectively, it may sound disgusting today, but you're marrying effectively your brothers and sisters. You understand? If you're the first people, everybody's related to each other. This is why when you're looking at the Sands people, they all look very similar. You put, you understand, 20, 30 black people in a room today, everybody looks different. Yeah, because our genes have been tampered with. So the science of us is not to be in need, because when you're in need, yeah, you're opened up now, you become a wanted. Understood? And so when you become a wanted, anything or anybody or any force or source now can fulfill that need. Yeah, and some of those may not be for your people or for your race or for you as an individual. Whereas if you're dealing with your own, you understand, it's a different instance, different feeling. For example, yeah, if you go into a bank, for example, they don't lend you the money when you need it. They lend you the money when you don't need it. Yeah, that's what called having good credit is. Good credit means, well, they're a good risk to lend them the money because they don't really need the money. They want it, but they don't really need the money. Yeah, but when you're in need of the money now, they don't want to give it, or if they're going to give it to you, they're going to make your situation worse because of the interest rate. They're trying to charge that to you. Whereas if you're borrowing the family from a reasonable sibling, for example, or from your mum and dad, obviously you've got it in a certain instance, they're not going to deal with it the same way a bank's dealing with you, because the bank's looking to exploit that lending for profit purposes. You understand? If you've got reasonable or caring or loving family who have it to give and you borrow it from them with the intention of paying it back, it's a different type of energy that you're dealing with. So you think about that on a racial perspective, yes, then there's no outside of our culture of Wu-Sabat if we're living for and by each other, because we're going to deal with each other by our part, our rules, our guidance, etc., etc. So we're not going to exploit that position when a person is in need, because you're looking at the person as I'm looking at just an extension of myself, because we're all interconnected. You understand? So this is a science that we have to get and understand. This is why we're talking about, okay, living in same environments, informed by one another. Do you understand what we mean by divine love and these types of characteristics? You understand? Because when I'm looking at the next brother or sister and vice versa, we're looking at ourselves. Yeah. And so this is the mentality that we had back then. Obviously, them separating us is separating and dividing our spiritual powers as well as our physical capabilities to look after ourselves and those who look like us. So this science, as I say, of being able to direct this power is what is being depicted here by them holding that pine cone, which could be considered today maybe supernatural abilities, which they express through Marvel and all these different types, DC, which are illusions based off of, obviously, the reality of who we are, which is having real power within this environment called black magic. Yeah, when nature works for you, or the force of nature works for you, and you are black. Now, excuse me. So one of the things that we're talking about with the Lotus of Life and Sacred Feminine and the transformation of the woman back to power, obviously it's the balag, which we talked about earlier, or this message that has to be delivered as part of us reconnecting with the spiritual science of Wu-Sabat. Yeah, so as you can see here, in this Gospel of Yaanuwn, or in this instance, it's really breaking the spell of the ghost by giving us back this information, because it's taking us back into this blackness or darkness. But as you can see here, the world is transforming back to its original state, being matriarchal to power world, from this patriarchal to power world that is from male dominance back to female dominance. Yeah, so this was none other captured in the order of Hathor, understand, or Hatat Hara, understood, or Hatat Haratat. So in this order, this sacred order of feminines, understood, which is, say, Arashta or Isis, who was the one symbolically who obtained the sacred word from Ray, which gave her the power, and then she passed that power onto her son Hara, understood, and that power was what they call the secret word, you understand, or the sword. The secret word, which makes an individual a Hara, you understand, in that regard. And we see on the 20th chromosome the HAR1 gene, what they call the human accelerated region, which is extended in human beings, you understand, and allows us, as I say, to interconnect with our twin planet called Razak or Rizq, you understand, allowing us to jump from one to the other at times where the planet is potentially in a situation of disrepair or danger from many of the climatic or extinction level type events that happen over the lifetime of a planet. So the Order of Hathor, as you see there, you see the symbol on many of our temples in Kadem Mahmat, ancient Egypt, and you see it there, this symbol of this order, this feminine order, protecting the secrets of the feminine there. And you see how it's been copied and grafted into other cultures. So those wings, ultimately, when they're pointing in that direction, they symbolize the upper and the lower world. So the physical and the spiritual. But ultimately, as well, those wings, for those who really understand, symbolize craftships, you understand, or one of the ability to travel, not only through space, but also interdimensionally. You understand? So depending on one's level of technology will describe whether they can travel interdimensionally or intergalactically. Maybe the proper way to describe it, as far as using ships and crafts to travel long distances throughout this tremendous universe, and using things like black holes in that regard to travel long distances over shorter periods of time, by using the science of how universes on into dual, so on and so forth, multiverses are structured, and also that things open up at certain points in time as well, which also allows or facilitates the travel. So as we talked about, I think in Mother Circle of Existence, that the deity had Hatshepsut, or one of our ancestors, Hatshepsut, one of those female pharaohs. Remember, she was a hermaphrodite who hermaphrodites vibrate over and above the normal human range because they have both genders within them, and she was the last, one of the pharaohs who opened up the gateway, and then by way of one of her descendants, crafts then came through later in the reign of you understand? So there are various different ways in which travel for us can take place. And actually, if we think about Man from Planet Risk and books like Science of Healing, Supreme Mathematics series, within our doctrine, the human body in itself was a ship or a craft. So not even is a ship or a craft. So we talked earlier about the technological capability of the Natharu. Well, the human body is not just a vessel for us to be able to walk up and down in this physical. It also, as I say, enables us to travel intergalactically, because it in itself is a craft ship, you understand, which can be, as I say, transformed with the right type of spiritual skill. The capability is there, but not necessarily the knowledge of how to do it. You understand? So those wings symbolize upper and lower, but also the ability, as I say, to travel by way of crafts. You understand? Brings a new meaning to the way that a lodge is also called a craft, isn't it? You understand? Certainly for us in that regard. Yeah, so you see the Order of Hathor there, where these sacred orders have been waiting, as I say, locking in for the right time in order for certain things to re-express themselves once again. You see how that has been copied and grafted into different cultures around the world, where you get, as I say, them really trying to tie themselves into the vine in that regard in terms of Lilith. But here we see that depiction or female depiction of some of our other deities, with the same wings shown. Understood? Yeah. So here's Sakhmet, understand, or Sachamtat. Word means power, and here you see the pre-dynastic version of that. And so you notice, as I say, when doing pre-dynastic, you can notice that the pre-dynastic depiction of the woman, she doesn't have a mask. Yeah, so when you see the mask here, what you know is that that's really dealing with dynastic periods, where, as I say, you've got the meshing together of two cultures, Anunnaki and the Tharuian culture coming together, which gave birth to those 46 dynasties. When we step pre-dynastic, then we can see, but there's no mask there. Do you understand? Because the masks were brought in by, as I say, those extraterrestrials referenced as the Anunnaki. Now, I've gone through this many times before, so we'll do that again. This is a depiction of Arashtat and the lotus they see, or the Tet symbol within the lotus flower, representing the symbol of regeneration. The Tet there not only symbolizes little people, but the blood also within the human body. So you can see there that regenerative cycle that she's holding there. It's all about the menstrual cycle, which in religion made it that the woman is unclean. But in Patarak, the unclean issue, I urge everybody in the call to go seek that out, women in particular, that the woman is not unclean during the menstrual cycle. It is a symbol of regeneration. Do you understand? When somebody's got to be disgusting, but a booger up their nose, you don't say that the man is unclean. You understand? You just got a booger up, you have to clean your nose. Do you understand? So in a similar sense, the woman is, it's a regeneration cycle for her to remove impurities out of her system, so she shouldn't be locked up in a room somewhere. All these different types of nonsense that's come out now. Obviously, before there were, in certain cultures, maybe before there were pads and different things to stop the bleeding. Obviously, there may be practical reasons why you're not going to sleep in the same room as a man in that regard, but Clearly, people have been around for millions of years and dealt with these things quite happily, but they originally came along and tried to separate it out or make the woman almost evil in that sense when she's on her menstrual cycle, when it's just a natural part of nature. We obviously go through that cycle where we have a number of excretions, called going to the toilet every day. It's the same thing. Do you understand? So this is where this monotheistic practice really starts to suppress women in this regard, and really, if you think about it, becomes anti-nature or against nature, which is why it is labeled with that sixth ether force in that regard, because it's going against nature. It's anti-nature in that regard. It's not recognizing what nature has programmed, not only its characteristics in beings, and its programmable expression, obviously in representing existence in this regard as a woman. So regeneration is part of the natural cycle of things. The problem is with the 16th, remember, we were only taught about one side, or the light side almost, and almost the blinding light side of the knowledge. So you were given evolution to talk about growth within existence. They didn't teach you that you have to add an R to it when you're talking about the Nagaru race and the word revolution. Understood? Which goes anti-clockwise around the circle of the smart circle of space, matter, and time, as opposed to clockwise around the circle, which is for them. Understood? So, really important part of this class at the moment, so pay attention to this part if you're not familiar with this. So, you see here in verse 256 of the Lotus of Life, the Master Teacher expressing to us about symbolism around these numbers. It says, "For you see, Sabians, when you overstand binary symbol, you will note mental is 0 and physical is 1, as used in the cells or atoms of the computer, of the computers." 257. That being said, male equals 0 and females equal 1. So we're going to pause there for a second to help our understanding of this even further. So we're going to tie up a bit of what we learned in Mother Circle of Existence and what we're seeing here before we start going into differences between male and female. So let me make it a bit easier myself, because I can't draw on this screen easily. So I'm just going to switch, if I can, to the whiteboard. Okay, let me see. Just bear with me 1 second. Man, could you just check? Can you see my screen? Yeah, the whiteboard screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, my whiteboard. Yeah. Okay.
And we have about 10 questions pending.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me take those questions first, then.
Right, take the questions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
1 moment. Right. Dermot has asked. Hold on. Give me a second. Yeah. Dermot has asked a question, and he says, "Can you explain how the Anunnaki hold us as a pine cone, please, as I was over the understanding that they created the Europeans?"
Sorry, say that question again. Can you explain why the...
Right. Can you explain how the Anunnaki hold us as a pine cone?
Okay.
Over the understanding that they created the Europeans.
One is not related to the other, so they're not holding us as the pine cone. What it's showing is that as extraterrestrials, they have the ability to use their third eye. Understood? So that's what it's symbolizing. It's symbolizing their capability to use their third eye. Obviously, us having the pineal gland with melanin production also have that capability. So that's just distinguishing the fact that they have that capability. That's why they depicted themselves showing that the ability to direct that power in a direction or at an object and things of that nature. So it's not related directly to us, it's just showing their capability. We, unfortunately, through mixing, have Anunnaki genes and Natharu genes, but our capability for that came by way of the Natharu, regardless of the interaction with the Anunnaki in our genes later down the line. Next question.
Right. Hatshepsut has asked, Nagar Karadu with a black mother and a Spanish non-white father, are they full Nagar?
So a Nagar father with a what? Sorry?
A black mother and a Spanish non-white father, are they full Nagar? Full.
It really depends. When you say Spanish, it would really depend on, that's because Spanish obviously is a language, not necessarily a race. So it depends on what the person looks like and who their parents are. Sometimes the what we consider to be black or who's part of the family of Nagar is a lot wider than we think. So maybe if they've got dark hair and dark eyes, then that individual oftentimes may be considered to be a part of the Nagaru family. Now they may have more recessive genes, but because if that person, as I say, the dark hair, dark eyes, for example, his vibrational rate is not the Caucasian vibrational rate of 5, then when the child was being conceived, the woman did not drop her rate down to below 6 ether. She was still vibrating at a natural vibrational level. Therefore, she didn't drop to match that man. Do you understand? So it depends what the man looks like, who his parents are, genes, so on and so forth. But if he's dark hair, dark eyes, then he's still really part of the Nagaru family. They like to separate obviously Latinos and blacks oftentimes, so that to keep them separate, so that we wouldn't come together and realize, hey, we're the majority in this situation, and overthrow the ruling party. So they separate us with terminology that's got nothing to do with race. Latin is a language; it's not talking about the genealogy of the individual. Do you understand? So, yeah, a mixed race person can have weaker genes, but once they get with a person with more dominant genes, then obviously the dominant genes are going to express themselves a bit better. So maybe slightly weaker, but still part of the Nagaru family. Now, where they sit in terms of son of God versus star child, as I say, depends on that male's genetic makeup. Any other questions?
Right. Where are we? Right. So this is from Judith again, talking about the perpendicular, the mirror effect. So she says, so with the perpendicular line, I still cannot see how one season is in effect and the other is not. With the tilt, I can see the 4 seasons.
Well, as I say, you got to realize that there's no tilt in a perpendicular rotation. But remember, every day that planet is obviously rotating, so it's getting that the energy is being evenly distributed, isn't it, on the planet to get the same amount of sun. It's just at a certain point within the 24-hour cycle, it's going to be dark because you're away from the sun versus towards the sun. Do you understand? So in that context, you're getting basically one season, obviously across the planet, you understand, versus because you're getting, and the top part is hitting a certain type of energy from the planet, the bottom half is hitting another type of energy from the sun. So you've got two different types of experiences, but they're quite similar, as spring and autumn are similar. So when they draw it, if you see in the books, let me draw here, you can see that, there they draw it. If I don't know if you've seen it before. So they draw the seasons, they draw it like that. Is that what, YX? So it should be an X. And they may say atum, excuse me, atun, amun, and then anun. So that's showing you that basically that spring, what we're calling spring and autumn, are very similar because they're balanced cycles, but there is a slight variation in that. You understand? So this is what we're talking about with two seasons. Whereas now here, is where you get your summer and you get your winter. And the reason why they call it male and female, because the male and female in this context, isn't it? Both of those, if you analyze the angles, you get 360 degrees, with two X's and 360 degrees. If you look at the angles, the 490 degree angles. But here, with the YX, it's not balanced. So you're getting 90 there, which is 270 and 270. So they're not balanced positions. Summer is not a balanced season. Spring is not a balanced season. You understand? Now, what I'm saying to you is that when it was perpendicular, there was no summer or winter. Just two, basically, you had what would be considered to be spring and autumn, which are very close to each other in terms of vibration, simply because solar energy is hitting at that angle, at that angle, so that's the sun, it's hitting at that angle, and then, you know what I'm saying, as the sun is rotating, as the sun is rotating, we're getting an even distribution around the planet every 24 hours, and the sun's hitting this energy at a certain angle. That's giving a slightly different vibrational type of energy, but they're similar in terms of seasons. But they're considered to be seasons because the energy level versus top to bottom is just slightly different. Do you understand? And in that regard as well, remember, you've got other factors, isn't it? You've got a north and south pole. You've got different types of land in those areas. Do you understand? Different types of water configuration, so on and so forth. You understand? So all of those things factor in to the slightly different variations in the environment in those areas. Do you understand? And that's simply because of the angle. So slightly different experience depending on where you live in, top to bottom, as well as obviously the land configuration, other things in relation to that. You understand? So even the sun in itself, maybe all parts of it are not exhibiting equal amounts of energy in that regard. And so you're getting a slightly different experience. Remember, you got sunspots, or there's a sunspot on the sun, which would affect the output where that sunspot is, obviously, which has led to the birth of the planet and other things. But the sun in itself, even in what it's expressing, is not always even output on all parts of the sun. So I don't know if that helps to understand your question a bit better.
Judith said that she sees it now. It's the tower attack.
Okay, no problem. Next question.
We have an anonymous attendee, and they're asking, I was ambidextrous until the first grade. I was forced to write with my right hand. Is there any way to regain balance again? Zamal.
I suppose, you would have to practice, isn't it? That's the only real way. Maybe, obviously, the fact that you had it before and it was there, and obviously by way of, a lack of understanding and bad conditioning, I suppose you've lost that. Then the only way, I suppose, to regain it, at least other than a complete reset of your genes, which is not due to take place unless you had intervention by your ancestors, you would have to retrain yourself to do that by either doing things like writing, and doing various different tasks with the hand that used to have that ability or skill. So your weaker hand, if you would consider it weaker in that context. So practice would help to develop or restore the neuro pathways that were previously active, and maybe now dormant because of, say, bad conditioning in that context. Any other questions?
Right. One more question here. Derma has asked, who was Lilith exactly?
Not to go down that route too much, but she was, in the Bible story, she was Adam's first wife before Eve. Yeah, so if you want our perspective on it, you need to go to Holy Tablets. Chapter 5 is probably a good look. And then if you wanted an external look, then you need to look for a book referred to as the Zohar. Any other questions?
No, that is it now.
Okay, right. So let's help with our understanding of these zeros and ones. So remember, it's interesting that Judith was asking that question around the perpendicular. So if you think about it, the old percentage sign that we were looking at previously, the percentage sign is now this, excuse my drawing, but percentage sign is now this. So therefore, you can see there that is at an angle, isn't it? Yeah, if it's related to that 23.5 degree angle, but the separation of that was to show that percentage was to show the difference between what we're describing as the physical versus the etheric, you understand, or some refer to as spiritual, you understand, or loosely matter versus energy. Do you understand? Yeah. So when we put it in a perpendicular context, where we see it like that, understood? Well, what are we really looking at? We're looking there, if we go to the right side at the number 10, and if we go to the left side, we're looking at 0, 1. Now remember, I think it was in the Mother Circle of Existence class, remember it was expressed to you and taught that when we're really talking about 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, all the way down to 9, we're really talking about the antimatter side of things. And then when we get to 10 or 1, 0, and then we go 1, 1, 11, we're talking about matter. Yeah, because you think about it, we go from hydrogen all the way down. I think 10 is neon, isn't it? A new form of light that gets birthed in that context. So now the master teacher helps us out. So let's make it clear for us. So we see that that's really, so it's 0, 1, So remember, there's no such thing as a number 1. When it's all percentages. So when you get to 99% of 1, you have to take 1% of what the thing is going to be transforming into to make it complete. Yeah. So we have our on this side. Of the 1, and then in order to make that complete, we need 1% of 2, or the thing is transforming into. So in order to get 99% of 1, we're taking 1% 2 to get that to transform into. So if I drew that like a circle, and I drew that. Yeah, in order for that to become into something, in order for it to be complete, it has to take a percentage of the next thing that it's transforming into. That's where we get the whole or the completeness. Yeah, it's energies in a transient state. So when we go to the left side of that one, understood, this is referred to as antimatter. Yeah, another word for antimatter is what? Dark matter. Yes? And on this side, it is what people refer to as matter. Yeah, but really, the master teacher helps us out of our understanding, and it's called lighted matter. Yeah, so we should be or atomic matter. Yeah, so in that middle point, that one, yes, is what? Is hydrogen. That's the differentiator for us, yeah, between physical and spiritual. Yeah, so hydrogen, yeah, or the water generator. So to the left of hydrogen, yeah, we say left because I'm drawing it on the screen. But when we go in that direction, so to speak, yeah, we are going the antimatter route. Yes, we're going subatomic particles. And then now when we're going from hydrogen, now hydrogen first atom. So we're going the atomic direction. So that's considered to be atomic matter down to 99. And obviously we know there are man-made elements beyond 99. So that is called lighted matter versus what? Dark or antimatter. So the one, yeah, in that context, yes, represents represents hydrogen. Now, pay attention. Yeah. So one for us, because remember we expressed to you in a previous class that zeros came in with the Anunnaki. So to us, yeah, in our culture, ancient Africans, yeah, ancient Egyptians, that one can be one as a whole, but it can also be 10. It can also be 100. It can also represent 1,000. You understand? 1,000,000, so on and so forth. All of that represents one. Understood. Now, to help our understanding even further, one, yes, one basically is universe. Zero is just verse. Yeah, so one, this pen, universe. Zero in this context is just verse. Right, this pen's a bit awkward. So 1 equals universe, 0 just equals verse. So remember what we say when we say universe. Universe means to verse energy into one form. Yeah, and if you want more information, existence, how, and why, actual fact. Remember, it talks about how universes are created, how there are things or particles in the universe that are floating aimlessly, and when the summer of, because universe themselves, or existence, excuse me, not universes, universe has seasons, and when the summer of existence reaches these parts of within existence, it helps them to formulate these energies that were sitting there aimlessly, or particles, and verse them into one form. And this helps to form a universe over a 9-year period. Understood? So verse is representing things. You understand? One is here in this context is the power or the capability of that being to verse it and give it form. Because in verse it's formless. In universe it has form. Do you understand? So in true form, you understand, uniform is a form, isn't it? So we go from 0 at verse, 1 universe, 2 dual verse, 3 triverse, 4 quadverse, 5 pentaverse, 6 hexaverse, 7 Theophoniverse, 8 octaverse, and when we get to 9 now, that is multiverse. Do you understand? Multiverses at 9. And then when we say it, all of it, we would say what? Omniverse. But omniverse would also be at that version, at that side would be uniform. It would be the uniform, isn't it? The true form is all. Yeah, if you're talking about everything. Whereas everything else, we break it down, will be part. Yeah, and various things have given birth to various things within all. Yeah, so 1 can also be uniform, and the 0 then relates to version. Yeah, so 1, the true form or uniform 1, and then we now have versions off of that original. Do you understand? Which is what, when you think about your 10, yes, 0, the 1 was created, and now as we step into, so the 0 and the 1 coming together, think about like male and female, the kadub, I think that's the Sabatic word, the penis, coming together into the space, yeah, which is the whole in that context, and they birth in a next version. You understand? So we're going up levels of the same thing. A version of the same thing, which is why to us, yeah, 1, 0 or 100 or 1,000, etc., can be the same thing because they're versions now off of the original. Do you understand? Now, before I move back to where we were, any questions on that? Does that make sense? Or if there's questions, please question so we can make it clear if it's not clear.
Right. Nobody's posted a question, but I would suggest that would be gone over again in another class sometime because it was pretty heavy.
Okay. Happy to go over it. You understand? But yeah, I say, so that 10 or the percentage sign, remember, or the original percentage sign that we're seeing here, remember, it was the fact that, as I say, it's making this separation between spiritual, or what you say, etheric, and physical. Do you understand? Now, when we're saying spiritual, another way to say that is energy. Now, it's all energy. You understand? And sometimes we describe it in our doctrine as energy matter, and then matter energy. Yeah, energy matter or matter energy, you see it in that way described as well. But for the purposes of this, at least, left side is really, so remember we talked about earlier, they're only giving you one side of the story, isn't it? Evolution. They're not giving you the revolution side of the teachings, because we're coming from the darkness manifesting into the light. Light is only 10% of existence. The other part of existence is 90%. So existence is made up of darkness, understood. Light is a small part within the darkness. So dark or antimatter, yeah, on going to the left. So 0 to the left, and then the 0 to the right is atomic or lighted matter. You understand? So you've now got that understanding. To upgrade, now they can appear opposites. They're not opposites in terms of equal. 90 versus 10. Understood? So you go 99 all the way down, yeah, and then you've got the etheric side, which is E1 to E99. Understood, yeah, on that side. So that's what your percentage symbol symbolizes, percent, because there's no such thing as number one. When you talk about hydrogen, even the word itself, remember, it means water generation, doesn't it? If you look at the word itself. So as we're transitioning from the dark matter side into the atomic matter side, yes, you're looking at energies transforming into something else. Yeah, so a transition, you understand? Not a hard separation as it may appear to be. You understand? So this is your expanded mind as you're seeing things being birthed out of the darkness. Do Do you understand? That then become detectable, obviously, in space and time. Do you understand? So the bit that we don't see is taking place in the darkness, isn't it? We're logging it at the point, for example, when a child is born, we're logging it at the point where the child is now into the light world. We're not always calculating, or we previously wasn't calculating all of the aspects that take place in the darkness. Do you understand? So this is what that's talking about there. You understand? So, and not to necessarily confuse it further, but basically when we talk about universe, or excuse me, when we talk about multiverses, so we get to 9 before we talk about omniverses, everything. In English, the master teacher gives it the definite article in English with the word the. You understand? And then by the time you get down to a universe, he uses the word this. You understand? Dual verses, we use the term these. Everything in between, from tri to octa, we use the word those. So definite article, the, for multiverses. Then, as I say, from octa to triverse, we use the term those. Dual verse, we say these. And when we talk about the universe, we say this. You understand? Yeah, say this. Now, interesting enough, if you think about the way we're ordered, yes, I'm going to go back to I'm going to stop frying people's brain, I promise. But think about the way in which, as a human being, both male and female, we're ordered. Yeah, and how we're split down the middle. Think about the human body. When I draw this, I'm not going to give everything, but think about how you're ordered. Yeah, all this symbolism that we're seeing with the numbers, etc. Yeah, and you look at your divine design, you can see those same patterns in there if you think and look more closely. Yeah, if I do that for certain brothers with a 2-ball cane now, you see something different. Anyway, let me switch back. If it's not clear, please ask questions. Happy to stay on it. Just ask, not a problem. Yeah, we can take our time, you understand, in that regard, so that people get it. You understand? But it's the first time. Sometimes you have to let things sink in. Now, here we see now that the master is expressing to us, that being said, male equals 0 and female equals 1. Understood? Now, what's it saying about the 0? We're saying 258. 0 is one who always wants to analyze. He is analytical. 259. 1 is one who sees things as they are. She is accepting of things as they are. 260. So the male sees fatir al-fatar, natural nature, and sets out to dahoy, paint or rasum, draw it onto a canvas or paper to take things apart to see how they work. 261. The Ashar female looks at fatir al-fatar, natural nature, and accepts its natural nafari beauty as is. So, one of the things that we understand here is that there is a distinction, clear distinction of how males and females see things. Now, the male clearly is a version at 0 of the female. Yeah, he is an offspring of the female. Yeah, so we were obviously a part of that, and she is a part of us, and she gave birth to us as males. You understand? This is part of the M. The M is the, you understand, is that original. The other bit is that O part, isn't it? You understand? That's 0. But the M is the, really was symbolizing that 1. Understood? As the female. Remember, to us, M was what? It symbolized the owl. Yeah, in the hieroglyphs, that M symbolized the owl, isn't it? Yes. Ba'ul, you understand? I think this is the term. I mean, just get that wrong. I need to just look that up again. But the owl symbolized the owl as a symbol, correct? And then what happens is in the monotheistic religion, so in Judaism, The word for mother, which was taken from the Sabaic word, you understand, yeah, which was the name for the hours, M, yeah, E-M, is their word for mother. In Arabic, the word U-M, is their word for mother. But it's from the Sabaic word for from, which is M, understood, when dealing with people, for example, or names of people, the word M. But that takes you back to the M sound, which is the symbol of the owl. You understand? Again, a symbol of a nocturnal being. We talked about earlier, the darkness. So the M, remember, which is the same number, 1,000, yeah, as they use it in the Roman numerals, M is 1,000. We know that 1,000 in the Sabaic culture is the perfect number, isn't it? Because, or it's the number of the Nephara, because you get to 999, yeah, which represents us at our height physically, and then we step over into the etheric side, where our hair follicle, which was shaped in 9, turns inward, where we were hairless, and then we become pure energy. 1 representing, mother, and then those zeros, isn't it? Space, matter, and time. Again, same things that are all things, those 3 things needed for existence. Understood? So the 1, which is the real, is key. You understand? And the 0 being verse, which could be things, you understand, before they are versed into form. And then 0 as material or matter or things, represent the male as the offspring of the original. You understand? Which is interesting that the word other of M other starts with that O, or could be, as I say, referencing 0 there. So we get 2 perspectives on how we see things. Do you understand? And this is important for us to understand when we're getting into conflicts and arguments with each other. Yeah, because we have to check ourselves in terms of, am I seeing or am I understanding the nature of the person who is talking, if they're a female? Am I understanding the nature of the perspective of the male when he is talking? You understand? Because this is telling you that, and this may seem odd to say, but it is that the woman is grounded more in reality. Yeah, it's explained that the male is more, in this context, whilst being analytical, is much more of a dreamer. Yeah, so you can get into an argument, for example, you might say, okay, you might be thinking, okay, well, I've got these, as a male, let's say. So there's a male, he's got, you know what I mean, hood dreams. Yeah, I'm going to be a multi-millionaire. I'm going to have, you know what I mean, all these, cars, Maybach, all this different type of thing, houses, based off of this idea that I want to progress and pursue. Now, his woman, you understand, who he presents the idea to, may say, well, how are you going to achieve that? You've only got $20 in your bank account. You understand? Now, we could say that some people say, well, she's negative, she's not supportive of my dreams. But the male's in dream world, whereas a woman's looking at the situation, the reality of what is, you got $20 in your bank account. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but that's not your reality. Now, does that make her negative, or is she acting to her nature? Yeah? So the point is that if you're gonna present your dreams, that you should utilize. If I'm the 0, then I'm gonna utilize the 1 to check whether my plan is got some reality to it. It's not necessarily practical, or maybe I need to do more work on it. Maybe it's just all in my head, but now I need to put more detail to it and to work on it in order for it to be a reality. So we can get into versus arguments with each other by not understanding that the nature of who we are is, you understand, it's affecting the way we perceive certain things. You understand? This is what the book is really explained to us, more so to understand, well, who the women is, because we we obviously live in a matriarchal society, so there's been fair understanding of what a certain type of male is, not necessarily the African male, but certainly the Mukasu male being in charge of most of the information source on the planet. We've got their perspective on things, but the female perspective of how they see things has been suppressed, particularly through monotheistic religion. So we sometimes have to check ourselves on both sides, you understand, to make sure that we're understanding each other's nature and what to expect, you understand, of how a person's going to view a certain thing. So you're going to present an idea where you're going to get, some cold water poured on it, but that's the cold water of reality. So if you expect it, then not going to get offended, do you understand? And maybe in the same way, a male looking at a female idea may want to well, explain to me, break this down, do you understand? Well, I've got this feeling, what do you mean by that? Explain. You're not explaining it clearly. And we're getting into conflict with each other because we're not understanding the nature of who is speaking, do you understand? Now, remember, in our culture, they separate us by sex into male orders and into female orders, do you understand? And so that we can develop and learn to work together, both as males and then females. But eventually, when you get back to the ancient Egyptian order or AEO, you come back together, you understand? And so, you understand, gender becomes less important when we get older. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying it becomes less important as we get older because males, for example, their testosterone levels start to reduce. As with females, your estrogen levels also start to reduce. So we're becoming more balanced beings as we get into the latter part of, or the third quarter of our lives, understood, as we're preparing to transition out of the physical into the next level of existence as spiritual or esoteric beings, understood. So, yes, it's important now, understood, and it has its place in terms of our understanding. The book is trying to first look at it, we see things differently. So, sometimes, in the heat of discussion between male and females, we also have to think, okay, well, what's our nature? And that's not factoring in also people's personality and all the different types of things that add complexity to who we are as human beings, i.e. 30 personalities that we're managing. But this is showing you that we see the world differently because of how we have been designed, how we have been configured, etc., etc. Any questions? I'll move to the next bit. Okay, not for now. So, what's it saying here? So, 264. So, to transform this world out of the yadadat hands of the male mind back into the tapal world of the female mind, 265. We activated the idea of the computer, which the Ayash male will call a great invention of his, 266. When in fact it was us, i.e. Parnathara, who activated the idea. For you see, the computer uses Shabat images to develop ideas. 267. You don't or no longer have to build destroy to Banu build. 268. It deals with Shabat image. So with that, the right side of the Damag brain, which is of the Asha female, is being redeveloped. So you can see that in this regard here is very important, isn't it, what's being expressed here. So because the woman was trapped in the home through, patriarchal, religious, cultural ideas that have been fostered on, particularly in the Western world, and then obviously spread in other places around the world, the woman was trapped in the home. And what we're seeing, particularly now in this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a social media conflict, I don't know if it exists outside of that, but of this kind of back and forth between male and female, is that most of the ideas are some kind of pseudo-religious or monotheistic religious hybrid of the male saying, well, what they expect the woman to do. You understand? And then women also kind of leaning a little bit on what they expect a man to do. All of this really predominantly informed by the books like the Bible, the Quran, and obviously within the Bible, the Torah. You understand? So that thinking is coming really out of that. Even though people say, well, I don't follow that particular religion, I don't follow that religion, so on and so forth, the kind of hallmarks of that are still sitting in there. They've informed the way in which we sit in society today. Now, the problem with places like the US and here in the UK is they don't have a proper culture. So, you know, how males are to act and how females are supposed to act or whatever, it's a myriad and a myriad of confusion, let's be honest. And now it's becoming a problem because there's this pseudo war being created, or gender war, not only of male and female, but also now adding in trans, you understand, and the LGBT community, which is a whole nother agenda about population control, which is diminishing even the role of the woman before she even gets to even enjoy, let's say, nature transforming the world back to it. They're trying to everything to another thing now to even suppress that coming through, which is another thing for another day. But the point here is that Parnatharu here, and in the Holy Tablets, the chapter of the underworld obviously goes into the ancient computer, which informed really the design of the PC called Mac and the Apple Mac today. This is ancient technologies which were in the subterranean in certain parts of the planet, which is not solid as we think it is, but rather hollow. There are, you understand, beings that have lived there for millions of years, you understand, in the subterranean parts, where they're large caverns. And the planet's basically hollow, the central sun 600 miles in diameter. And part of the technology that was being used down there has informed the modern computer, hence why they make the statement that we activated it through, obviously, the people who seemingly were in charge at the moment. They inspired its creation so that it would be sitting in the homes of women so they could use it once the internet was then formulated to make money, understand, and get themselves out of the conditions they were in, understand, by giving them a way to make money in the home, understand, and I use the word home in inverted commas. You understand? So they've developed the power by using the new technology, which is basically liberated. It means they've been able to contact, connect with other women around the world, so on and so forth. So this was the power of putting the computer, or the personal computer, and then obviously now leading to other devices in the home. Now, the thinking here about images is that, as we've expressed, when you think about the planes of existence, and this has been explained before, but for those who are more new, we'll go over it again. So when you think about, and it talks about this in the Black Book as well, when you talk about construction versus anti-construction. So when you think about this, if you think about somebody building their dream home, yes? A person who has a very, what's the word? Word I'm looking for. Can't think of it at the moment. Specific word I'm looking for, but a very, let's say, they're strong-minded. There's another word I'm looking for. I can't think of it at the moment. But excuse me, yeah, a vivid mind. Yeah, so a person has a vivid mind can imagine what that house looks like in their head already. Now, thoughts are made up of the same matter as physical things. So in the person's head, the house has already been created. Understood. But in order to bring it into what we would consider to be the world of matter, so outside of the person's own imagination and into the material world, it then has to be broken down. Understood? I.e., understood, from the mental plane at 4, for example, we then have to put it into the spiritual plane, which is at 3. And so you create something called a blueprint or plans. So it was a 3-dimensional image in your head. Now we've put it into a modern times now, you can do 3D plans, but let's say it's on a 2D plan called a spiritual plan. Now we have to go and we move now to the plane of force from the spiritual plane. So what does force need? Okay, well we need people power, to build it. We need, money in this society, it's related to force, in order to make these things happen. So if I've got enough money, I can make this happen tomorrow. If I ain't got the money, it's going to take a bit longer now to make this happen. You understand? Unless I've got volunteers, which is another type of power. You understand? So the plane of force now is the power needed, you understand, or the vitality needed to make the dream house happen. You understand? And then now, by the time I get to the physical plane, we need materials. So basically, in order to me to get concrete, I've got to take something else, destroy it, which means in Wu-Sabat, change in form or system. You understand? Creation means growth into form or system. So I have to destroy something else in order to build what I want to be. So if we want wooden floors, we've got to cut down trees in order to manufacture it into engineered or real wood flooring or whatever, into planks, etc., that can be laid to make our flooring, or to build the internal structure of the building, wood, etc., and so on and so forth. You understand? To build our frame and our structure of the building. So you have to destroy it in order to build. You understood? But this computing technology clearly allows you to build without destroying something. The same way in your brain, yes, you can formulate the idea, understand, and you can make it manifest in your head. You didn't have to destroy anything in order to build it. So you can see where the power of our mind on certain planes has been constrained. Because if you had the power to manifest things immediately within existence on certain planes, what happens if, that person got on my nerves, and because I was playing that computer game, a thought flashed in my head to shoot the individual. With that power, I would manifest that thing instantaneously, which could result in the death of another human being. That's how powerful, if we had access to that mental plane and all of our thoughts manifest instantaneously outside of our own heads, how problematic that could be. But the power of certain other entities who have gone through, learned the discipline, understand clearly the weight of the power by Natharu, how you have to, take time with this power, use it in certain ways. We can't intervene in every situation because it's affecting these rules within existence, how they operate, so on and so forth. Do you understand? So this is showing you, cut a long story short, or a long explanation short, not story, but a long explanation short, is that basically they empowered the female to get wealth by putting the computer in the home, because she was constrained in the home by the then cultural norms. And then now they gave the computer, which gave a new type of way to create. So that was less male, less destructive in that context. Understand? All based on the right hemisphere, or hemisphere, chem meaning blackness. Hemisphere is where that word hemisphere comes from, side of the brain. But both, as we learned earlier, need to work in unison with each other, in cognizant with that third eye, in order for you to be 100% complete and whole as a being. So, at 271, we advanced the computer technology and bring it into the home and into the Yadad hand. 272. For males have most women in the homes as a housewife. 273. Now from the Khalun home with a computer, she becomes part of the World Wide Web and connects to other thinking women world over. 274. As men plan wars and political powers, women are coming back to Saham power and will rule again. 275. A man will return back to his original state to protect the females to build the shelters. Understood? So this is what matriarchal starts to mean in that context, at least in the physical world, us being born into these gender bodies. Understood? How we work together to maintain our environment. Equal but different. You understand? Like circle and square, both 360, but you understand? Equal but different. Any questions? Okay, so let me go to the Matthews in a moment. So please state the scroll for 0 and 1. Let's see. So Mother Circle of Existence is a good scroll for explaining 0 and 1. The 0 and 1 that we're talking about here, in this context with the male and females, is from Lotus of Life. Yes, seek out that scroll, Lotus of Life. Supplement that. So you could look at, say, Mother Circle of Existence, as well as is it Egyptian ontology versus mythology? Yeah, very good scroll around the symbolism of the 0 and 1. And absolute in their meanings in different contexts. They can their meanings are expanded. And so, like you understand, symbols can be more than one thing depending on who is saying it. So 276, to respect the natural rules of nature as it is. So 277, for you see you have masnoid males, feminoid females, and baphanoids, both genders. 278, this is how natural nature balances out in all things, such as Zarek, Khadir, Saphir, yeah, blue, green, and yellow. 279, green is Batha. It has an equal amount of both to become the color green. 280, A flat, A major, A sharp is the complete tone. 281, cold, warm, and hot. That is a natural rule of Fatah nature. So we can see, say, that balance being created, understood, in the context of who we are. Do you understand? And the important things about us as Musbatu Sabians, as the children of the Kadem Mukmatu or ancient Egyptians, is the fact that that culture and our culture today is based on natural nature. Do you understand? So everything we did was reflective of natural nature because we want to be in resonance with Parnatharu. Understood? Because they had laid down the ascension pathway for us, obviously, who are no longer clearly in the physical form, existing without the need and necessities of the human body, you understand, transforming themselves out of that, but have laid the pathway for us who are what they were to now obviously transition and follow that pathway. And we do that by staying in sync with natural nature, in tune, as it was said, with natural nature, which is what you see in a lot more of these primitive societies around the world. The word primitive doesn't mean backwards. It comes from the word prime, it means best. Yeah, so the more ancient peoples, the indigenous peoples around the world, you see they're much more in tune with the natural order of things. We think because we have certain levels of technology, yes, that we have now taken ourselves outside of that. Understand? And some of that's lazy technological development in some constances by those who are in power at the moment, not taking time, for example, to make sure that the technological advancements are in sync with nature. Hence the word, the industrial age. Industrial or in dust or putting dust into the atmosphere, polluting the environment. Understand? So that us as ether beings, you understand, who work best by way of the breath, you understand, when we breathed in this polluted air, it would seek to destroy and kill us, understand, or certainly diminish our etheric powers. Understood? They care little for that because they don't have a lit solar plexus. So they have a lunar plexus, so the apparatus is there, but it's not lit. So the industrial age, which are now, the West is saying, well, India, you can't do that now. You can't come up the same way we come up now to get wealthy like we did. China, you can't come up the way we came up now because they're putting dust into the atmosphere, which you learned about, remember in the Holy Tablets, we learned about the stories of Halal, etc., you understand, on risk of polluting or firing the missile to pollute the atmosphere on risk. And essentially the same thing happening in that context here today. Do you understand? They call aerosol. Do you understand? Aerosol. Remember aerosol? The CFCs were polluting the atmosphere and causing a hole in the ozone layer, which was meant air, symbolically air for aerosol, air. O for omega, you understand, which means death, and then sol, you understand, which means sun. So by removing the ozone layer, would allow more sun rays in, you understand, hence killing or harmful sun rays in, hence killing the life forms here on Earth. Okay, so we see there, so 295. So we put the computer in her dad's hand. Now she's beginning a new beginning, and in time, the world will once again be matriarchal. One, mother, M or M other or motherhood. M equals 1000% or mega. So we're explaining to you the importance, of that. And you see matriarchal, that the one, and obviously here the zeros. You understand? And what they represent. The perfect number is 1,000. You understand? In our culture, this is shan, which is a Spake word for lotus flower. You understand? Because it's the symbol for 1,000 is Parsa Shan, which is the lotus flower. Do you understand? Which is symbolic of the female. So M 1,000, M mother. Do you understand? And you think about even in Freemasonry, they say Eminem, correct? Not the rapper, but Eminem or Master Mason. Do you understand? So again, the widow's son, who was the original widow, Arashta or Isis. Do you understand? Who's in the story symbolically, was killed. Asar was killed by Set. And she had to find the kadub or penis, do you understand? And by artificial insemination, do you understand? She birthed the reincarnation of Asar insofar as Ha, understood, or Hara. So we can see there that all of these things tie into our culture. So, Wu-Sabat and the master teacher in his skill as a master teacher, said, let's put all these things back together. So nothing you should be looking away from. The Mukasu tells you, stay away from Freemasonry, while he uses it to run the world. You understand? So the things he's telling you to stay away from, you need to take a look on. He made black magic a bad term. Black magic is when nature works for you and you're black. The things he's telling us to stay away from, you have to pay more attention to. You have to be the opposing force for what is right. Understand? Not the opposing force, not the conforming force to live in his image and after his likeness. We were given the ability to rebel, understand, to take us back to who we are. That doesn't mean that we should rebel against all forms of order, understand? Not necessarily controlled in that sense, but order may be a better way to describe it when we're dealing with ourselves. Understand? So it's necessary for a period of time to rebel. Now we have to accept the order of how things are, and if we are to be aligned with natural nature, then we have to accept matriarchal and help to bring it in. That doesn't mean weak men. Understand? It means women coming out of their shell to become who they are, and obviously us, the sacred masculine, coming out of our shells to become who we are, all of us on the pathway to help each other to become supreme beings again. And then in male and female coming together, that our optimum goal is to produce star children. Do you understand? In that context. And so that in 4 generations time, Saying we have strengthened our genes and we're birthing supreme beings again. It's a short amount of time to get results insofar as the next 400 years are crucial because the genes shift every 400 years. So we're putting in the work now in order to, as I say, take control of our future by way of taking control of our fate as far as the children being born. Now, we spoke about this in Mother Circle of Existence. We did cover this. I didn't go into it in loads of detail because we'd covered it before, but I think it's certainly worth just highlighting a few things. And so what we were talking about was obviously the woman is a mystery in Zen. Represents that darkness. But I think the issue that patriarchy has brought, or patriarchal monotheistic teachings, to say specifically in the religion, is the removal of sacred feminine or female or feminine satisfaction through her sexual powers being satisfied. Understood? And so many of us, if we're honest, we have learned what we call sex or making love or other words which are not appropriate for this particular class to describe that by way of what's been taught in this society. And you were never trained. Yeah? No. Well, some of you may be, but most of us, let's say, were never trained. You understand? If we're being honest, it's kind of trial and error. Understood? Everybody claims to be, well, not everybody, but a lot of men will claim to be the dandada of, sexual prowess, etc., etc. And if the woman expresses too much of that on that side, that's seen as, a negative, let's be honest. You understand? So if he expresses too much sexual power, that's seen as a negative within this society. And only women know that basically a lot of time, whilst men ejaculate and orgasm, probably most of the time they're having sex, unless they're very specifically intentional about not doing that. Most women are left dissatisfied. So, and even in some cases, which is probably even worse, don't even know what satisfaction should be. Do you understand? Now, why is this relevant or important? Well, in natural nature, if a woman does not experience an orgasm, it's an automatic trigger for her to have to come back and live another lifetime, because she is not complete, understood, if she does not experience an orgasm. So automatic, hey, you got to do another lifetime. Yeah, no ascension. You got to come back and experience that within this school, understood, called life. Now, we explained, or what the book is explaining, a very good book to go and get from your local All Eyes on Egypt store. I mean, it's worth us just going over a few things. I know we covered it maybe previously before, but there's new people on the class. Yeah, the fact of the matter is, too much trial and error is considered to be the art of sex. So most people think they're skilled in the art, but have little or no understanding of the science of sex. Now, as we expressed to you in part 1 of this and previously, remember, the science of this is about maximum pleasure with the least amount of adverse results, because you know that natural rules say that for as much pleasure that you experience, you must experience the equal amount of pain on the other side. So we want to get max pleasure, least adverse results. You understand? Now, is size important? Well, you understand, maybe. That is the answer to that question. But what we understand is that the nerve endings, do you understand, in the vaginal canal don't go more than 3 inches deep. So a man, let's say, and it was an actual fact, and I've forgotten what it is for the moment. So I'll have to think of it next time. But it says that penetration is pain, not pleasure. Now, when you're reading something like that, you have to think, this is interesting what the master's expressing there. And one of the issues around that is that because, you know, I think we talked about this previously, but it's kind of slam, you understand, the harder the man thrusts, do you understand? Trying to hit and tilt you understand, the woman's womb and all this kind of stuff or whatever, is not necessarily a pathway to the woman getting an orgasm. Now, it may be the way we've been taught, and it may be even the way women even expect to receive or experience pleasure because of the way they've been taught. That, you understand, men taking pride in the fact that, okay, yeah, you understand that, boy, I gave it to her yesterday. And the fact that your woman is walking with a limp or is sore or whatever the case would be, you know, the male feels like his chest is bigger the next day because of, you know, I mean, that session that took place. And I challenge us to think about the wisdom of that. Do you understand? So we think about, okay, we're supposed to engage in a pleasurable act. It's got many different names. One of them maybe making love. And one or more of the party, mainly the woman, ends up injured. You understand? Maybe womb tilted out of position. And we call this a great experience. We call this a successful session. Do you understand? We call this, he really put it down, so on and so forth. Do you understand? Now, how has that arisen? Has that arisen because that was the natural thing to do? That's what we naturally thought of. Or has it come about because of what we have been, you know, indirectly taught in that regard? And we're seeing us, particularly with a lot of particularly in the music industry, interviews, different things going on, we're seeing us go down a certain route of pleasure, spiritual development, which is going down a route which is more akin to the lighter side. And when I say light, I mean light as they use the word dark, yeah, or the more chaotic side, the blinding light side, where it's more pain, pleasure, versus, you understand, what we want to really be experiencing is enhancing the pleasure. Because pleasure was put into the sexual process by design to keep us wanting to come back more and more and more to have more children. So, see, I'm not been pregnant, but you know, it looks fairly painful. You know what I mean? 9 months, understand? Yeah, for a few, whatever, minutes, yeah, if you're, or hours if you're even better than that, or seconds in some people's case. That of pleasure is 20, 30, 40 years if a child's born, you understand, of responsibility, you understand, which some may consider to be pain. Not in all instances, but certainly part of that child's life is going to involve some pain. But it's certainly a lifetime of responsibility in that regard for, you know, what in the context of a child's lifetime, a very momentary experience of pleasure. You understand? So, very powerful set of things that are going on. And as I say, certain teachings are pushing, particularly the youth and all that, now with the mobile phones, access to pornography and things of that nature. It's pushing people down this blinding light side, which is even becoming more and more what may be described as perverted. Now, I'm not judging what takes place in people's bedrooms. Do you understand? Let's be clear about this. Do you understand? We want to be open-minded around this. But you have to realize as well, when you're going down certain routes, the mind of the people who are creating certain pornographic thinking and who brought porn, particularly in the West, and that's permeated into the world per se, yeah, they struggled, a certain group of people struggled to get it up. Remember, you were considered a man if you could raise the apron. Yes, when you look at a lot of our statues of some of our pharaohs, etc., how they're depicted in a certain stance, yeah, and the apron is raised, yeah, That's why you were considered a man, because you could raise the apron. Others couldn't raise the apron. Or in order to get them to raise the apron, they got to be thinking that the female form, the female divine form, the beautiful female form was not good enough to get them to raise the apron. Yeah, so the defects, lack of salt in their body and other things, cause them now to have to introduce all kind of different perversions in order just to simply, you understand, get it up. So I can't just get it up based on the female form. I've got to now, I've got to dress as this particular individual, or dress as a cat, or dress as a giraffe, or do you understand? All kind of madness, or a gun to a person's head, or do you understand? Be strangled, close to death, and all kind of nonsense, just to basically get what they're calling a solid erection. You understand? Then it becomes something completely different. So when we're talking about enhancing pleasure in this regard, we're not going down that route. That's a route that people can explore, understand, if that's your so wish, understand, but not going down that route where they are linking, do you understand, pain, pleasure, and in certain instances, things which are close to death, that could result in death around the sexual process. Do you understand? So remember, we're self-preservists, we're not self-destructionists. Understand? Which is what, unfortunately, we're geared up in this society to destruction. We're seeking to preserve. So there should be nothing really in your repertoire of seeking pleasure that the extreme of it potentially is going to result in your loved one dying. Understand? So you need to think carefully about playing with fate and playing with nature around doing things in the bedroom that potentially, could result in somebody either being seriously injured or, being killed. Understand? So even though it might not feel sacred, it is sacred, and so we must treat our sexual powers in that regard, in how we're doing things. The point we're saying is that the woman has been shortchanged. You understand, in this regard. And as I say, as we will talk about these things in the context of both male and female ascension journeys, but particularly the female's ascension journeys, the misuse of sexual power, you understand, obviously has, in this context, catastrophic effects for our divine genetic line, our royal lineage, royal seed, overstood, as well as for the individual's own ascension journey if the power is misused. And both are comparable, and males have to take their responsibility in that regard, and women also have to take their responsibility in this regard. We're not going to get anywhere by pointing the finger at each other. We need to understand it, and how maybe certain sacrifices maybe need to be made on both sides in order for us to enhance the race. Remember, we give you that quote from the master teacher on the 9 ball, that which is best for the individual is not always best for the race, but that which is best for the race is always best for the individual. And so having control of our desires maybe in certain instances what we need to do what's best for the whole, not what is best for us feeding our lust. Now, let's be clear, we don't want to get into a situation where we're judging people's bedrooms. And one of the things about breaking the spell is to stay out of people's bedrooms. You understand? So if it's not any of your business, then stay out of other people's business. Do you understand, when it comes to that? So as long as people are keeping it within a certain way, it's not our business. People get excitement in different ways. What we just need to think about sometimes when analysing these things is what is the driving factor, or where did this originate from? You find a lot of times, certainly in the information we've been exposed to, it wasn't necessarily from us. Yeah, we're in somebody else's mind and perversions. Now, you can see here with the nerve endings only being 3 inches, why, and the fact of the matter is this is somebody's interpretation of the female form. And what's important to understand, we might understand what is being called the lotus of life, Do you understand? Or the woman's a half flower, which is describing the vaginal area, and it's 9 different sections in that regard, is that each woman has a different flower that has to be unlocked. Understood? Yeah, so not all the same design, each is unique. So a technique in one relationship, if you've had more than one, may not work in another setting. So yeah, it's a code, you understand? Yeah, that has to be unlocked, like you're sitting by that with that safe, in the old movies, and you got the headphones on, and you're turning the dial, whatever. You got to listen out and figure out what the combination is. So this is how this needs to be unlocked. Now, in that context, does that require communication between the parties? Yes. And does it require knowledge and understanding of the female form? Yes. And this is what the book seems to help us to unlock in this regard. Yeah. So let's look at some of these forms here, because I'm not sure we covered it in loads of detail last time. Right, let's continue. So this is a heart or flower. Yeah, so I'm going to come back to these in that regard. So if I say anything wrong, I'm sure females will jump in and helpfully correct me in that regard. So we're looking at an image of the female form here, and this area. We should call it as the heart or the flower in that regard, with its many different elements. And some refer to that area as the female sexual organ as the vulva. When we see in etymology here, we can see womb, female sexual organ, so on and so forth. So we understand, taking it back to simple basics, that the double X chromosome is going to result in this particular form being born, and in certain instances, if it's an XY chromosome, which is a male form, then it's going to obviously change what is produced. So we've got these 9 different sections broken down. So we've got the mons, which is this area at the top, so soft pubic hair, tissue, curved pubic bone, dividing the vagina into the outer lips. So here we've got this outer part here, which is considered to be a lip, referred to as, in their terminology, as labia majora. And then here we've got labia minora, so major lips here on the outside, and then minor lips here, what's called minor lips, on the inside here. So outer here, inner here. So I'm sure women don't know this already. Men, you're learning something new. You may know it already. Clitoris, so very important point. At 3. So lips 2, clitoris here at 3. So is this part here? Do you understand? So at the apex of the labia minora. You understand? So right at the top here. So if that was an XY chromosome, this would have been the form. This would have formed the male penis. Understand? So the clitoris here is the what the males consider to be his penis, or the female penis, but obviously it is internal. Do you understand? And when aroused, do you understand? This hardens up, just like a male's penis hardens up when it gets filled with blood. You understand? So very important, highly sensitive area here that, again, for maximum pleasure for female, must receive the appropriate stimulation. Understand? So urethra, we see here in this section here. So urethra really talks about the canal that the woman obviously secretes urine from, and again, in a sexual context, is very highly sensitive area. Also, a bit similar, I suppose, like a male penis at the tip of it. If circumcised, is also highly sensitive, which was deliberately done for that reason, to cause males in that context to release their semen faster, because the God or the extraterrestrials of the Bible wanted them to produce more children or human beings for the purpose of food. Now, so we see here in a highly sensitive area, and we see there how, let's say, in a practical sense, it is used for secreting urine, but it's also one important pleasure center in, as I say, helping the woman to achieve satisfaction. So here, I think this was just shown to just show the fact that we've got these outer and inner lips here, labia, majora, and labius minora. Now, we can see here that these two glands either side of the vaginal orifice here, yes, are the baffling gland. So the reason why the woman today, even though she is considered to be unisex in that sense, and I mean uni as in neutral sex, I mean uni as in one single sexual being, but is in actuality a hermaphrodite, by nature and by design, is because these baffling glands that do create a thicker type fluid which helps this area to be lubricated, so in readiness for penetration. That fluid there used to at one time secrete a seminal type fluid. So semen was contained within that fluid, which was able obviously to fertilize her own eggs. So this is where parthenogenesis, the practical element of it, where a woman is able to fertilize her own eggs, but produce another female, not a male, because she doesn't have a Y chromosome, a defective Y chromosome, but produce another male. It's coming from these glands here, called nicknamed the baffling glands. Understood? Yes. So this is how you were able to, and still able to, but that part of your brain, because over time, as expressed in the Black Book, the man that you created, you fell in love with the way in which children were produced. So over time, you basically gave up your divinity by allowing then the man to control when a child would be produced. You understand? Because you now put that aspect of fertilization inside the man, therefore giving up your divinity to him, or your godship or rulership to the male, because now he can decide when to fertilize your eggs. So you gave up your divinity by falling in love with that which you created as your protector. And so now, as we see here, nature has to step in and reverse all that to bring us back to matriarchal living once again. Which is a life form. You could decide to fertilize your own eggs at certain times and use a male to fertilize those eggs at other times. Komodo dragon and other life forms do this in nature already. And so whilst it may feel unorthodox and strange in the human context, this is what's happening in nature, and the woman was equipped with these capabilities and still is, but they lie dormant now because of, let's say, bad information. Now, what have we got here? So we've got other areas. So we've got the urethra sponge, which I don't think it's clearly shown in this diagram. We've got another one coming up. So obviously it's a sponge in the urethral canal. And again, this is, you see a spongy erectile tissue surrounds the female urethra, composed of 45 little ducts, collectively known as the paraurethral glands, as the female prostrate. Now, this is important because, particularly in males, these are some of the signs which the book describes as well. So you want to get the detail of it, seek out the scroll itself. But the reason why, one of the reasons why slamming hard and fast and all that kind of stuff is not necessarily the best approach, is because you may miss certain key changes which are taking place within the vaginal wall area. You understand? And so one of the one of the ways or the detections around this is that basically that upper wall, which we look in the diagram, we'll show a different one in a sec. But basically, that you see the G-spot area in the sand, which has been described as a G-spot area, is in this upper wall. Do you understand? And so that can now, when it starts to become engorged with blood, if the woman's appropriately turned on or excited, you understand, the male will can feel that change in his penis. Do you understand? He should feel it on the surface of his penis to know that what he's doing is correct. You understand? And that may be mixing it up. It could be long, short, you see, long, but deep, shallow thrusting, different ways, obviously, in which you're going to seek to help the woman get her orgasm. And so this urethral sponge goes through a slight transformation, which, as I say, the male can feel in his penis. I mean, the whole area is going to become engaged and become much more puffed up or tighter, but he should be able to feel that if he's skilled, as I say, in the science and art of sex, or instructed by his woman in the science and art of sex, to know how to work or unlock the mystery of her Zahar or flower. So, vagina, in a vagina, we see the opening there. Understand that. Again, only 3 inches, remember, the nerve endings go up to. So, yes, how you work and play with that, you understand? So, trying to lick out a woman's womb, it's not necessarily, I mean, it's like some women may like it or have learned to like it, you understand? But know that those nerve endings only go to 3 inches, you understand? So how you interpret and use that is really important. Perineum is this area, say, between the anus and the lower part of the vagina there, understand, or the labia minora, understood. And again, highly sensitive erogenous zone and area. Again, if played with, can help, as I say, the woman to achieve that orgasmic state. Anus says often overlooked, has a lot of nerve endings. Again, if utilizing this area, you have to be very careful, particularly around mixing the juices between the two, liquids between the 2 areas, again, as a male, etc. In that regard. But highly sensitive, again, erogenous zone, but care must be taken to, if you're not skilled in this area, then you need to read up on it before you start doing crazy things, because it's like, can cause a lot of damage otherwise in that regard. And then the G-spot or pleasure spot in the upper part of the vaginal wall. Now, so that's why you can see with the missionary position, which depending on how, the woman's vaginal canal is arced, it can be difficult to be hitting the right area. So you're supposed to be, or you want to be certainly caressing or touching this spot or up in this area here. And so you have to be quite intentional about aiming for that. Do you understand? And getting the rhythm right, etc., to be hitting this upper wall. This is why some positions may be more conducive to helping women to achieve satisfaction than other positions. If you're going to do that, you need to think about, okay, say male and females, you need to think about, okay, well, how can we, get to this or aim, let's say, for this upper spot here, or this G spot area here, which is the upper part of the wall. Do you understand? Some say it's not a specific position, it's in a location or an area, which is called a Grafenberg spot. That's what the nickname for it is. But as I say, it will be different in different women. So, again, you're seeing that kind of sponge that we were talking about earlier. and how, as I say, when that changes, it can be felt by the male in the upper part of the vaginal canal. We can see, again, I suppose, looking at the clitoris, so this is some interpretation of this diagram, that it is, say, it's the female penis, so to speak, but it's an internal structure, do you understand? And as we can see here with these bulbs, I suppose, in that context, being linked to the Bartholin glands, do you understand? Which you can see now how, okay, these used to secrete a seminal type fluid, do you understand? Very much like, male testes, do you understand? And how they used to fertilize their own eggs, do you understand? And obviously still can today, if that aspect of the brain is restored. This is another diagram, maybe showing the same similar things, absolutely in a different way. So when you look at these diagrams, well, is somebody's interpretation of it. Always keep that in mind. Open-minded to correction. It's good to understand certain things in this regard as we become more scientific in our thinking in this regard. And so basically the pressure is on, isn't it? Every time, if that's your choice, you should. So it's a male. If it's male to female that we're talking about, obviously we understand there are other combinations depending on how a person's born, inform certain preferences. But here, as I say, male and female, at least in this context, then, as I say, every time you should be aiming to achieve satisfaction. And in this new cycle of understanding between, mates, then you should not leave the woman in an unsatisfied state. So, however much work that's going to take may depend on a lot of different factors. Do you understand? And also, women having to now get to understand their own body so they can obviously inform their man. You understand? And help in this regard, because in some instances as well, women have never experienced this before. I don't know, how to do, what to do to experience it. Once it happens, then it can be obviously a little easier. But if not before, then obviously to think about and help how to achieve that orgasmic state. You understand? Now, so men may be both in the sexual context. Remember, women are weakened by way of their DNA through the sexual process. Men are weakened physically by the sexual process. So as I say, maximum pleasure, least adverse results. You understand? So both must work with each other, you understand, in a collaborative, so like a business meeting, but in a collaborative way in order for both to get maximum pleasure out of the situation. So it needs to be in a giving way, ideally, in order to achieve that. And now even scientific / artistic in order to achieve those results that you're looking for. So these are the feminine's erogenous zones, the parts of her khatat body that arouse sexual desire. When you learn just how to touch her as well as when to touch her and where to touch her. Yeah, a must know for all lasting relationships. Yeah. So this is key, you understand? But you may not have linked it to a person's spiritual growth or development. But in the right type of ways, you understand? Not in the degenerative type of ways. This is something, remember, these you had the temples of Hathor, or Hathor, understand, or Hathor, temples to Arashta, etc. And these are the types of arts and skills that were taught to us, do you understand, in controlled ways in order to, as I say, maximize our spiritual powers, you understand, through the sexual process. But also, if we were looking to produce children, then we want to produce the optimum type of children by being with a compatible partner. Do you understand? In all ways, both externally and also internally, you understand, being compatible with each other. So I'm going to stop there for now. I think it's a good point to stop. And then next class, we can explore this bit further. We will get into the symbolism behind Genesis chapter 3. So we'll go into that in some detail. And then round out with some of the sayings. Well, talk about a bit of the genetic kiss as well. So we need to get into that in a little bit of detail. Very important. And that 30 use and why these sexual powers we are equal in our sexual powers, but the results of misuse are not the same. Do you understand? And why we need to think about that in the context of both male and female, both protecting each other's ascension journey. Do you understand? We don't want to be doing things that basically dampen or take out a person's soul. Do you understand? Or cause them to lose their connection. And so we have to think carefully around this, about how we now our mind is being restored right, understood, how, as I say, the 9 must control the 6. Mind over the 6, which is symbolic of sex, and how your mind must overrule our sexual powers, how we must use it to enhance, and not degenerate us as a people. So any final questions before we close out for today? Okay, not sure where that is today at the moment. Appreciate everybody for turning up today. Next class is on the 3rd. Let me just check that. On the 3rd of October, Sunday the 3rd of October. Not to be missed. Not to be missed. Yeah. So if you do obviously want more information, obviously seek out, as I say, your local All Eyes in Egypt store, and pick up this Lotus Live book. So it's 2nd of October. It's a Sunday. So 2nd of October is the Sunday. That'll be the next class with part 5 of this. Hopefully we'll get to the end, maybe in that part 5. And if we can do, the next class after that will be the Science of Sound part 2. And for the brothers, then we'll do that as well. So, not anything else, just check in. Okay, so appreciate everybody for your time today. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care, and wadu to the Sabians if you speak that language. Everybody else, peace and love, divine love, ashuk. Take care. We'll see you soon.